The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Warp fields bend spacetime. Wormholes connect distant points through subspace corridors. Transporters convert matter to energy and back again. But what happens when something tears through from a universe where the rules are fundamentally different? Where time is a weapon, death is negotiable, and covering up the impossible is standard procedure. Captain Benjamin Sisko stood on the promenade of Deep Space Nine, staring at the impossible. The station's sensors had detected it 3 minutes ago, a massive subspace distortion originating from the wormhole, but wrong, all wrong. Not the familiar neutrino bloom of the celestial temple opening, but something jagged, violent, like reality itself was being torn open. Chief O'Brien had barely begun rerouting power to structural integrity fields when the distortion punched through into normal space 200 meters from DS9's docking ring. It looked like a wound in space. Crackling energy the color of bruised lightning, folding in on itself with a sound that somehow transmitted through vacuum, a shriek that made the station's hull vibrate in sympathetic resonance. And then something came through. Not a ship. A building. Sisko's combadge chirped. Ops to Captain Sisko. Sir, you need to see this. He was already moving, long strides carrying him toward the turbolift. Around him, the promenade had gone silent. Merchants, Starfleet personnel, Bajoran civilians, all staring upward through the transparent aluminum viewports at the structure now floating in space beside the station. It was distinctly terrestrial in design. Concrete, steel, glass. Architectural styles from Earth's early 21st century. And it was leaking atmosphere. The turbolift deposited him in ops 90 seconds later. The circular command center buzzed with controlled chaos. Major Kira stood at her station, hands flying across tactical controls. Dax worked her science console with focused intensity. O'Brien muttered creative profanity at the engineering displays. Report, Sisko ordered. The structure materialized at 1,347 hours, Dax said, her voice steady despite the absurdity of what she was describing. It appears to be a multi-level underground facility, somehow transported in its entirety, including approximately 50 meters of surrounding bedrock and soil. Mass, 4,000 metric tons. Composition: reinforced concrete, steel, various polymers. And Benjamin, it's from Earth. Which Earth? Sisko asked sharply. The Dominion War had taught him to assume nothing. Ours. Or at least, a version of it. Dax pulled up chemical analysis data. The concrete matches 21st century Cardiff construction standards. The steel alloys are pre-warp industrial manufacture. But there's technology inside that doesn't match any Federation database. And there are life signs. 5 humanoids, Kira added. 4 stable, 1, fluctuating. Our sensors can't get a solid lock on that 5th signal. It keeps phasing in and out. Hail them, Sisko said. O'Brien shook his head. They're not responding to standard Federation frequencies. I've tried everything from Earth's old radio spectrum to subspace comm. If they have communications equipment, it's not compatible with. Wait. He leaned closer to his console. I'm picking up audio. Low-frequency radio. Ancient tech, but it's definitely a distress signal. On speakers, Sisko ordered. Static-filled ops, then a voice cut through, male, British accent, tinged with pain and dark humor. Bloody hell, Tosh, tell me something's still working. Gwen, status. Ianto, if you're conscious, I could really use some coffee about now. Owen, stop being dead for 5 minutes and help me figure out where we, a pause. Oh. That's not Cardiff. Another voice, female, Welsh. Jack, the rift manipulators completely fried. And according to these readings, we're not just displaced. I don't think we're in our universe anymore. Brilliant, the first voice, Jack, replied. Absolutely brilliant. We tried to stabilize a temporal fracture and got ourselves thrown into an alternate reality. Torchwood's had worse Tuesdays. Sisko exchanged glances with Dax. Temporal fracture. Alternate reality. Rift manipulator. The terminology was unfamiliar, but the implications were clear. Whoever these people were, they dealt with the kind of phenomena that made Starfleet Science Corps nervous. This is Captain Benjamin Sisko of Deep Space Nine, a Federation starbase. You've emerged in the Alpha Quadrant, near the Bajoran system. Your structure is venting atmosphere and you're in immediate danger. We're prepared to beam you aboard, but we'll need you to lower any force fields or shielding. Silence. Then, Federation. Starbase. Bloody hell, we've landed in Star Trek. A different voice now, younger, precise British accent. Captain Sisko, this is Ianto Jones. We're not exactly equipped for space. Our facility wasn't designed for this environment. We have no shields in the sense you mean, but we do have several alien artifacts that might interfere with your, what did you call it? Beaming? Transporters, O'Brien muttered. And if they've got active alien technology, this is going to be a nightmare. We're reading 5 life signs, Sisko said carefully. Can you confirm? 5 of us, yes. Captain Jack Harkness, Gwen Cooper, Ianto Jones, Toshiko Sato, and Owen Harper. We're the Torchwood Institute. Well, what's left of it? Jack's voice had gone quieter. Captain, I know this is irregular, but we're running out of air and I'm the only one who can afford to suffocate repeatedly. If you can get us out of here, we'll answer whatever questions you have. Kira's eyebrows shot up. Did he just say, suffocate repeatedly? O'Brien, can you get a transporter lock? Sisko asked. The chief studied his console, fingers dancing across controls. There's a lot of interference. Some kind of temporal radiation saturating the structure. And there are power sources I can't identify, technology that's not registering as Federation, Cardassian, Dominion, or anything else in our database. But I think I can filter through it. Give me 2 minutes. You have 90 seconds, Sisko said. He turned to Kira. Major, have security teams standing by in Transporter Room 3. Full tactical alert. And get Dr. Bashir to the infirmary. We might have wounded. You think they're dangerous? Kira asked. Sisko looked at the structure floating in space, a building that shouldn't exist, containing people who talked about suffocating repeatedly and manipulating temporal fractures like it was routine. I think they're survivors of something we don't understand. In my experience, that makes them either very dangerous or very valuable. Probably both. The next 90 seconds crawled by. O'Brien worked his console like a musician, isolating transporter frequencies from the background interference. Dax monitored the structure's integrity, hull breaches spreading, atmosphere venting into space. Kira coordinated security teams, phaser rifles charged and ready. Got them, O'Brien announced. Energizing. 5 columns of light shimmered into existence in Transporter Room 3. 5 figures materialized, stumbling slightly as their feet found solid deck plating. They wore civilian clothes, modern by late 20th century Earth standards. 3 men, 2 women. 1 man in a long military coat stood at the center, clearly the leader. Dark hair, impossible jawline, and eyes that had seen far too much. Captain Jack Harkness took one look at the Starfleet security team's phaser rifles, raised his hands, and grinned. Well, he said cheerfully, this is either first contact or we're about to be shot. 50-50 odds. Anyone want to tell me which universe we've landed in? Sisko's voice came over the comm. Welcome to Deep Space Nine, Captain Harkness. We have a lot to discuss. Jack's grin widened, but his eyes remained calculating, measuring every exit, every weapon, every tactical advantage. Don't we always? He glanced at his team, the woman with dark curly hair and concerned eyes, the young man in the immaculate suit, the petite Asian woman clutching a damaged piece of technology, and a man who looked simultaneously alive and somehow wrong, like he was standing on the edge of existence. They weren't Starfleet. They weren't explorers seeking out new life and new civilizations. They were something else entirely. They were Torchwood. And the Alpha Quadrant had no idea what that meant. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. The station's comm systems crackled with automated warnings. Structural integrity compromised. Unknown contaminants detected. Temporal radiation exceeding safe levels. And somewhere in the background, barely audible, another sound, the Bajoran Wormhole pulsing with unusual energy, as if the prophets themselves were taking notice of what had just arrived in their space. In his office overlooking ops, Benjamin Sisko stared at the 5 people who'd just torn through reality itself and wondered what other impossible things were about to walk through his door. He didn't have to wait long. The interrogation room on Deep Space Nine was designed to be neutral, not threatening, not comfortable, just functional. A table, chairs, basic lighting. Sisko had chosen it deliberately. These people weren't prisoners, not yet, but they weren't guests either. They were unknowns, and in the middle of a war, unknowns got people killed. Jack Harkness sat across from him with the easy posture of someone who'd been interrogated before and found it boring. Gwen Cooper stood beside him, arms crossed, protective instinct radiating from her like heat. The others, Ianto, Toshiko, and Owen, were in the infirmary with Dr. Bashir, though infirmary was a generous term for what was happening. According to Bashir's increasingly frantic reports, Owen Harper was clinically dead but walking around anyway, Toshiko had temporal radiation poisoning that shouldn't be survivable, and Ianto kept politely declining medical scans while organizing the medical supplies. "Let me see if I understand," Sisko said, keeping his voice level. "You're from Earth. 21st century Earth. But not our Earth." "Close enough to make the differences disturbing," Jack replied. "Your Earth went through first contact with Vulcans in 2063, developed warp drive, joined a federation. Our Earth went a different direction. We had visitors too, but they weren't peaceful explorers. They were invasions, refugee crashes, temporal incursions. And someone had to clean up the mess." "Torchwood," Sisko said. "Founded in 1879 by Queen Victoria after an encounter with what you'd probably call a hostile alien entity. Our mandate was simple. Defend the Earth against extraterrestrial threats, acquire alien technology for the protection of the British Empire, and above all," Jack's smile turned sharp, "keep it secret." Gwen shifted uncomfortably. "We're not the Empire anymore. Haven't been for a long time. Torchwood 3, our team, we were different. We tried to be different." "Different how?" Sisko asked. "We stopped just taking orders and started asking if those orders were right," Gwen said quietly. "We saved people. Protected them. Sometimes from the aliens. Sometimes from Torchwood itself." Sisko studied them both. Jack had the bearing of a soldier, but his uniform was wrong, 20th century military styling, not Starfleet. And there was something else, something his instincts were screaming about. The way Jack held himself, like he'd lived through battles that would break most people. Like he'd died and come back. "Your people mentioned you can suffocate repeatedly," Sisko said carefully. "Explain that." Jack's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. "I can't die. I get hurt, I get killed, and I come back. Every time. It's not regeneration like a Time Lord, not cellular reconstruction like some species you've probably catalogued. I'm a fixed point in time. I literally cannot stay dead." The room went very quiet. That's impossible, Sisko said. Yeah, you'd think. Jack leaned back in his chair. But here I am. I've been shot, stabbed, poisoned, blown up, drowned, suffocated, vaporized, and probably a dozen other things I'm forgetting. I always wake up. Always. His voice had gone flat, matter of fact. This wasn't boasting. This was confession. How long? Sisko asked. How long have I been dying? Or how long have I been alive? Jack's smile didn't reach his eyes. I was born in the 51st century on a Bajoran Peninsula colony world. Became a time agent, got my memories stolen, ran cons across time and space, traveled with the doctor, that's a whole other story, got killed by Daleks, brought back wrong, and spent the next 150 years trying to die properly. Didn't work. I'm 173 years old, give or take a few decades I lost track of. And I've been running Torchwood for most of the 20th and 21st centuries. Sisko sat back. Time agent. The doctor. Daleks. None of it was in any Federation database, but the way Jack said it, the casual reference to centuries of life, to temporal manipulation, it matched the readings O'Brien had pulled from their facility. Temporal radiation. Technology that bent time like Federation science bent space. You're from the future, Sisko said slowly. I'm from a different future, Jack corrected. Your timeline went one way. Mine went another. But yeah, I was born about 3,000 years from now in my universe. Doesn't help much here. The door chimed. Come, Sisko said. Odo entered, his expression even more dour than usual. The changeling security chief carried a PADD, and his body language suggested he'd found something he didn't like. Captain, we've completed our initial scan of their facility. What's left of it, anyway? Odo handed over the PADD. The structure is a total loss, structural collapse is accelerating. But we transported several containers of salvaged materials before it broke apart. The contents are problematic. Sisko scanned the inventory list. His eyebrows climbed higher with each entry. Alien weapons of unknown origin. Biological samples from species not in Federation databases. Technology that appeared to manipulate temporal fields. Something labeled Resurrection Gauntlet. Another item marked Portable Prison Cell, Occupant Status, Contained. And at the bottom, Unidentified Organism, Extreme Biohazard, Recommend Immediate Jettison. You brought an arsenal through dimensional barriers, Sisko said quietly. We brought our archive, Gwen corrected. Everything we'd collected, studied, catalogued. Things that fell through the rift, the space-time tear that runs through Cardiff. Some of it's dangerous, yes. Most of it we don't fully understand. But we've kept it locked down for decades. It's what we do. What you did, Odo said coldly. In your universe. Here, you're 5 individuals with no authority, no jurisdiction, and enough dangerous materials to threaten this entire station. I've already identified 3 devices that could theoretically destabilize our reactor core. Jack met Odo's gaze without flinching. Then you've got good security instincts. I'd recommend stasis containment for the temporal devices, Class 9 force fields on the biological samples, and for the love of God, don't let anyone touch the Resurrection Gauntlet. It brings people back wrong. Like you? Odo asked. I came back different. The gauntlet brings them back dead. Jack's voice was ice. Trust me, you don't want to find out what that means. Sisko set down the PADD. Here's our situation. You're in Federation space, specifically under Bajoran jurisdiction, during a war with the Dominion. We're fighting shapeshifters who can take any form, clone soldiers bred for combat, and an empire that controls a quarter of the Gamma Quadrant. We don't have time for mysteries, and we can't afford security risks. So what are you saying? Gwen asked, tension creeping into her voice. I'm saying you have a choice. You can submit to Federation authority, full disclosure of your technology, cooperation with our science teams, and agreement to operate under Starfleet regulations while we figure out how to send you home. Or, Sisko paused, you can be detained as security risks until this war is over. Jack laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. Captain, with all due respect, we've spent our entire careers operating outside authority. Torchwood answers to no one because the people in charge don't understand what we face. Governments fall, regulations get written by people who've never seen an alien threat, and by the time bureaucrats make a decision, people are dead. That's not how we do things here, Sisko said firmly. No, you have a prime directive. Don't interfere. Don't get involved. Watch civilizations burn because your principles say you can't help. Jack leaned forward. We've seen what happens when good people follow bad rules. How many worlds has your Federation watched die because intervening would violate your precious directive? That's not fair, Gwen started. It's absolutely fair, Jack said, not looking away from Sisko. I'm not saying your ideals are wrong, Captain. I'm saying we've lived in a universe where ideals get you killed. We do what works. We save who we can. And we don't apologize for it. The door chimed again. This time, Dr. Bashir entered, looking professionally unsettled. Captain, I need to speak with you about Mr. Harper. Medically speaking, he shouldn't exist. No heartbeat, no respiration, no metabolic activity. But he's conscious, mobile, and according to him, has been in this state for over a year. It's not Borg technology, not any form of stasis I recognize. He's genuinely deceased but ambulatory. Owen got killed by another Torchwood operative, Jack said quietly. We brought him back with the resurrection gauntlet I mentioned. He's been living, or not living, ever since. Can't heal, can't feel anything physical, can't die again. It's not life. It's just existence. And you're keeping him like that? Bashir's medical ethics were clearly outraged. We tried to find a cure, Gwen said, voice breaking slightly. But there isn't one. Owen chose to stay. To keep working. To matter for whatever time he has left before his body completely breaks down. Sisko watched the interplay, the guilt on Jack's face, the protective anger from Gwen, the clinical detachment in Bashir's expression warring with compassion. These weren't soldiers. They weren't scientists. They were survivors of something darker than Starfleet prepared for. There's something else, Bashir continued. The temporal radiation they're all exhibiting, it's not passive exposure. It's integrated into their cellular structure, like they've been bathed in chronoton particles for years. Toshiko's readings are off the scale. If she were anyone else, she'd be suffering from temporal displacement syndrome. But somehow, she's stable. We lived next to the rift for years, Jack explained. It changes you. Makes you sensitive to time distortions, temporal anomalies. Tosh has been exposed longer than any of us except me. She can feel time like some people feel weather. And you brought this into my station, Odo said flatly. Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered. Red alert klaxons shrieked to life. Kira's voice crackled over the comm, Captain to Ops. We have a situation. 3 Jem'Hadar attack fighters just dropped out of warp. They're hailing us, and they're demanding we turn over the dimensional anomaly or they'll open fire. Sisko's hand went to his comm badge. On my way. Raise shields, bring weapons online. He looked at Jack and Gwen. Stay here. Don't move, don't touch anything, and don't make this worse. Too late for that, Jack said, already moving toward the door. The Dominion just declared we're important enough to kill. That means we're already involved, whether you like it or not. And trust me, Captain, you don't want to face Jem'Hadar without someone who can't die leading the first wave. Odo blocked his path. You're not going anywhere. Jack met the changeling's eyes. Your station's about to be attacked because of us. You can lock us up and let your people die, or you can use us. We've fought wars you can't imagine. We've faced extinction events. And we're still here. He smiled, and it was all teeth. Your choice, Constable. Sisko stood at the crossroads of regulation and necessity. By the book, these people were security risks. But the book was written for a different kind of war, before dimensional refugees brought temporal weapons and a man who couldn't die. Odo, escort them to Ops, Sisko ordered. But if they make one wrong move, stun them and throw them in a holding cell. Understood, Odo said grimly. As they moved through the corridors toward the turbolift, Gwen grabbed Jack's arm. We're not soldiers anymore, Jack. We don't have backup. We don't have the hub. What are we going to do? Jack's expression was unreadable. What we always do, Gwen. We survive. We adapt. And we protect people, even if they don't want our help. The turbolift doors closed, carrying them toward a war they didn't start but couldn't escape. In the interrogation room they'd just left, a small device Jack had pawned during transport blinked once and went dark. A perception filter, already scanning Deep Space Nine's security systems, already learning. Old habits, after all, died hard. Ops was controlled chaos when Sisko emerged from the turbolift, Torchwood in tow. The view screen dominated the room's center, displaying 3 Jem'Hadar attack fighters in close formation, their insectoid hulls bristling with polaron weapons. Behind them, space shimmered with the telltale distortion of a potential ambush, more ships waiting in cloak, patience bred into their genetic code. Status, Sisko commanded, moving to his command chair. 3 fighters, confirmed Jem'Hadar, Kira reported from tactical. They dropped out of warp 17 seconds ago and immediately went to attack posture. Shields are up, weapons hot. They're not even pretending this is negotiable. Daxa's fingers danced across her console. I'm reading elevated neutrino emissions from their position. Could be cloaked reinforcements, could be sensor ghosts. Either way, they're not alone. O'Brien looked up from engineering. Station shields at maximum. Weapon arrays charged. But Captain, if they've brought a full assault wing, we're looking at a prolonged engagement. We're still repairing damage from last week's Cardassian raid. Jack moved to the railing overlooking Ops, taking in the scene with tactical precision. His eyes tracked every station, every readout, every officer's position. Gwen stayed close to him, but her attention was on the view screen, on the alien ships that looked nothing like anything from their universe. Those are the Jem'Hadar, she asked quietly. Genetically engineered soldiers, Sisko said without looking away from the screen. Bred to fight, conditioned to die for the Founders. They don't negotiate, don't surrender, and they don't stop. They're addicted to a drug called Ketracel White that their Vorta overseers control. Take away the white, they die. Give them a target, they kill it. Sounds like they need better employee benefits, Jack muttered. Then, louder, Captain, how long until they open fire? Depends on what they want, Sisko replied. Odo, you're changeling. Any insights? Odo's expression was stone. The Founders view anything that disrupts the Great Link's order as a threat to be eliminated. An uncontrolled dimensional breach would qualify. They'll want confirmation of neutralization before they leave. So we hand over the corpses or we fight, Kira said flatly. There's a third option, Jack said. We talk to them. Every head in Ops turned toward him. You want to negotiate with Jem'Hadar? Sisko's voice was carefully neutral. I want to understand what they think we are, Jack corrected. He stepped closer to Sisko's chair, hands spread non-threateningly. Captain, they called us a dimensional anomaly. That specific language. Not invaders, not refugees, anomaly. Which means they've detected something about our arrival that scared them enough to send ships immediately. What if it's not us they're worried about? What if it's what we might bring through after us? Dax looked up sharply. He's right, Benjamin. The temporal radiation signature from their facility. If the Dominion detected it, they might think it's the precursor to something larger. A temporal invasion force, maybe, or a weapon. We're not a weapon, Gwen protested. But you could be, Kira said, studying her tactical displays. To them, you're unknown variables from another dimension carrying technology they've never seen. In wartime, unknown equals threat. They'll eliminate the threat. The comm crackled. A Vorta appeared on the view screen, pale skin, violet eyes, the two smooth features that always reminded Sisko of mannequins. This one wore the standard Dominion diplomatic uniform, but there was nothing diplomatic about his expression. I am Key Van, first of the Vorta in this sector. Deep Space Nine, you are harboring a dimensional contamination that threatens the stability of this region. The Founders require its immediate termination. Comply, and we will withdraw. Refuse, and we will sterilize the contamination ourselves. Sisko stood. I'm Captain Benjamin Sisko, commander of this station. The individuals you're referring to are refugees who arrived here accidentally. They pose no threat to the Dominion or anyone else. We're working on returning them to their point of origin. Keevan's smile was condescending. How delightfully naive. Captain, we detected the dimensional breach the moment it occurred. Temporal radiation output equivalent to a chronoton torpedo detonation. Subspace distortions that destabilized our sensor networks across 3 sectors. Whatever created that breach is a weapon, whether you acknowledge it or not. And the Founders do not permit weapons they cannot control to exist. It wasn't a weapon, Tashiko said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. She stood near O'Brien's engineering station, her small frame rigid with certainty. It was an accident. Our rift manipulator was trying to seal a temporal fracture when the Bajoran Wormhole destabilized local spacetime. The interaction created a cascade failure. We didn't choose to come here. We were thrown here. Your intentions are irrelevant, Keevan replied. The device that caused the breach exists. Therefore, it must be destroyed. And to ensure no replication of the technology, the individuals who operated it must be eliminated as well. This is not negotiable. Jack stepped into view of the screen. Funny thing about negotiations, they only work when both sides have something to lose. You've got 3 fighters and maybe a few cloaked ships. This station's got enough firepower to turn you into debris. So let's talk about what you're really afraid of. Keevan's eyes narrowed. And you are? Captain Jack Harkness. Formerly of the Time Agency, currently running Torchwood, and in my spare time, I collect death threats from fascist empires. Yours is actually pretty standard: destroy the unknown, maintain control, pretend you're protecting order when you're really just terrified of change. I've heard the speech before. Jack, Gwen hissed warningly. Keevan's expression went cold. You dare? Yeah, I dare, Jack interrupted. Because here's what I know. You detected our arrival, analyzed the energy signature, and immediately sent ships. Not to study us. Not to understand what happened. To kill us before we could become a problem. Which means you're not acting on intelligence. You're acting on fear. The Founders do not fear, Keevan said icily. Everyone fears, Jack shot back. Especially shapeshifters who built an empire on controlling everything and everyone. We're from outside your control. Outside your understanding. And that terrifies you. Sisko stepped between Jack and the view screen. Captain Harkness, stand down. To Keevan, the Federation will not execute refugees to satisfy Dominion paranoia. But we're willing to discuss containment protocols, technology sharing, and verification procedures. There's a diplomatic solution here. There is no diplomacy with contamination, Keevan replied. You have 1 hour to surrender the anomalies for termination. After that, we will board your station and neutralize them ourselves. First contact protocols do not apply to dimensional threats. The transmission cut. Silence filled ops. Then Kira spoke, voice tight with controlled anger. So we fight. 3 fighters we can handle, O'Brien said, running calculations. It's the ships we can't see that worry me. If they've brought a full assault wing. They have, Odo interrupted. He was staring at his security console, expression grim. I'm detecting matter stream distortions consistent with cloaked Jem'Hadar vessels. At least 6 more ships, possibly 8. They're surrounding the station. Containment formation, Sisko said quietly. They're not here to negotiate. They're here to prevent us from escaping with what they see as a temporal weapon. Dax looked up from her station. Benjamin, I'm detecting energy buildups in their weapons arrays. They're not waiting an hour. They're preparing to fire. The red alert klaxon switched to a higher, more urgent pitch. Combat imminent. Jack turned to Sisko. Captain, you need to evacuate non-essentials and prepare for boarding. They'll try to disable your shields with the fighter strike, then beam in Jem'Hadar troops. It's standard tactics, overwhelming force, no mercy, complete objective at any cost. How do you know their tactics? Odo demanded. Because it's exactly what we do, Jack said simply. When you're outgunned and desperate, you go for the throat. Fast, brutal, decisive. These Dominion guys. They're professionals. They won't stop until we're dead or they are. Gwen grabbed his arm. Jack, we can't ask these people to die for us. This isn't our war. It became our war the second we fell through that rift, Jack said quietly. And I'm not asking anyone to die. I'm asking them to fight smart. He looked at Sisko. Captain, you've got a man who can't die, a woman who can feel temporal distortions coming, and 3 others who've survived things your universe doesn't have words for. Use us. Absolutely not, Odo said. You're security risks, not assets. We're both, Jack agreed. But right now, you need bodies that know how to fight without Federation rules slowing them down. We don't have phasers set to stun. We don't debate the ethics of defending ourselves. And we sure as hell don't surrender to genocidal empires who think murder solves problems. Sisko looked at Jack for a long moment. Measured the certainty in his eyes, the darkness underneath. This man had fought wars, that much was obvious. Had made terrible choices and lived with the consequences. The question was whether those consequences made him reliable or dangerous. Kira, bring up our defense grid, Sisko ordered. O'Brien, route auxiliary power to shields. Dax, I want targeting solutions on every visible ship and probability curves on the cloaked vessels. Odo, security teams to all strategic locations. If they board us, I want them contained. And them? Odo gestured to Torchwood. Before Sisko could answer, the station shook. Polaron beams lanced through space, slamming into DS9's shields in coordinated strikes. 3 fighters firing in perfect synchronization, targeting shield generators with surgical precision. Shields holding at 87%, O'Brien called out. But they're concentrating fire on Section 12 Alpha. If they keep that up, they'll create a weak point. Return fire, Sisko commanded. Concentrated bursts, disable their weapons arrays. DS9's phaser arrays lit up space, brilliant orange beams crossing the distance in microseconds. The Jem'Hadar fighters peeled off in evasive patterns, their pilots executing maneuvers that would kill human crews from the G-forces. One ship took a direct hit to its port nacelle, venting plasma, but kept fighting. They're not retreating, Kira said, firing again. They're drawing our fire. Benjamin, I think they're. Space rippled. For more Jem'Hadar ships decloaked, larger cruisers with heavy weapons. They'd been waiting, silent and patient, for DS9 to commit to the fighters. And now they fired everything. The station lurched violently. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. The lights flickered, emergency backups kicking in. A support beam cracked overhead, sending Ianto diving for cover. Gwen stumbled, caught by one of the Bajoran officers. Jack grabbed the railing and held on, watching the tactical display with the calm of someone who'd seen worse. Shields at 43%, O'Brien shouted over the alarms. Multiple hull breaches on the promenade. Sealing emergency bulkheads. They're targeting our shield generators specifically, Dax reported. This isn't suppression fire. They're planning to board. Sisko's jaw tightened. All hands, prepare for boarding actions. Security 2. Captain. One of the junior officers at sensors looked up, face pale. I'm detecting transporter signatures. Multiple teams materializing throughout the station. Jem'Hadar soldiers. At least 40 contacts. 40. Kira breathed. They beamed through our shields. They waited until we were weakened, Odo said grimly. Now they're inside. An explosion somewhere below Ops shook the deck. Weapons fire echoed up through the open spaces, the distinctive whine of Dominion Polaron rifles against Starfleet phasers. Jack pulled something from inside his coat. A compact weapon, sleek and deadly, technology that belonged nowhere near the 24th century. Captain Sisko, that offer to use us? Clock's ticking, and your people are dying. What's it going to be? Sisko looked at the view screen, showing Jem'Hadar warships methodically destroying his station. Looked at his crew, professionals facing an enemy bred for war. Looked at 5 refugees who'd brought temporal radiation and impossible technology and a man who couldn't die. The book said they were liabilities. But the book was written for peacetime, before dimensional rifts and genocidal empires. Odo, Sisko said quietly, arm them. The armory on Deep Space Nine was designed for efficiency, not aesthetics. Rows of phaser rifles, tricorders, body armor, all standard Starfleet issue. Odo moved through it with practiced precision, pulling equipment while keeping one eye on Torchwood. Jack, Gwen, Ianto, Tashiko, and Owen stood near the entrance, looking distinctly out of place among the ordered military hardware. Type 2 phasers, Odo said, handing weapons to Gwen and Ianto. Stun setting is here. Kill setting is here. Do not adjust beyond level 10 or you'll overload the power cell. Tricorders for scanning, basic operation is self-explanatory. And comm badges for communication. He fixed Jack with a hard stare. You'll integrate with Security Team Delta. Chief O'Brien is coordinating defense from Ops. You follow orders, you stay in communication, and you do not improvise. Jack turned the phaser over in his hands, weighing it. Directed energy weapon, Nadion particle beam, variable intensity. Not bad. Bit bulky compared to what I'm used to, but it'll do. He looked up. What about my weapon? The antique you were carrying stays here, Odo said flatly. I don't know what century that technology came from, but it's not compatible with our systems and I won't have friendly fire incidents because your gun interferes with our shields. It's from the 51st century and it doesn't interfere with anything, Jack replied. But fine. Your station, your rules. He holstered the phaser. What's our tactical situation? Odo pulled up a schematic of DS9 on a wall display. Red markers indicated Jem'Hadar breach points. 47 confirmed hostiles, spread across 11 decks. They're moving in coordinated teams toward strategic objectives, Ops, the reactor core, shield generators, and weapons control. Standard Dominion boarding doctrine, secure critical systems, kill resistance, establish control. They're also looking for us, Tashiko said quietly. She'd been studying a PADD Dax had given her, analyzing the Jem'Hadar attack patterns. Look at the distribution. 3 teams are moving through sections that don't have strategic value. They're searching. Searching for the dimensional anomalies, Gwen said. For us. Which means we're not just defending the station, Ianto observed, adjusting his combadge with practiced care. We're bait. Owen leaned against a weapons rack, arms crossed. Being dead had certain advantages in combat situations, no adrenaline, no fear response, just cold tactical assessment. So we use it. Let them find us. Ambush the ambushers. That's suicide, Odo said. For them, Owen corrected. You've got a bloke who literally cannot die leading the charge. I'm already dead, so concentrated fire just wastes their ammunition. And the rest of Torchwood? We've survived things that make your Dominion look like weekend warriors. We're not Starfleet. We don't play by rules. We win. Odo's expression could have frozen helium. This isn't your universe, Dr. Harper. You don't know what you're facing. Then educate us fast, Jack said, because according to your readouts, there are 3 decks above us and closing. The deck shuddered. Weapons fire echoed through the station's corridors, closer now. A security officer's voice crackled over the comm, strained and desperate. Security Team Beta to Ops, we're pinned down near the promenade. Heavy casualties. Jem'Hadar are using some kind of shrouding technique, they're disappearing and reappearing behind our positions. The transmission cut to static. Odo's jaw tightened. Shrouding. Jem'Hadar can render themselves invisible for short periods. It's not cloaking technology, it's biological. They can't be detected by standard sensors when shrouded. But they can be detected other ways, Tashiko said, still studying her PADD. Their shrouding suppresses visual and electromagnetic signatures, but it doesn't eliminate mass or thermal output. If I can modify a tricorder to scan for. No time, Odo interrupted. Team Delta is waiting. You move now or you're left behind. Jack looked at his team. Gwen's hand was steady on her phaser, but her eyes betrayed the fear she'd learned to control. Ianto checked his weapon with the methodical calm that had kept Torchwood running through apocalypses. Tashiko clutched her modified tricorder like a lifeline. Owen just looked bored, the way only a dead man could. Stay together, Jack ordered. Watch each other's backs. And remember, these soldiers are bred to die. Don't give them the satisfaction. They moved out into DS9's corridors. The station's usual bustle was gone, replaced by emergency lighting and the distant thunder of combat. Smoke hazed the air from burning conduits. Bodies lay where they'd fallen, Starfleet security, Bajoran militia, all fighting to buy time for evacuation. Security Team Delta met them at Junction 17. 8 officers, led by a Bajoran lieutenant named Shakar. His nose ridges were tight with stress, his phaser rifle showing scorch marks from heavy use. You're the anomalies? Shakar asked, not bothering with pleasantries. We're Torchwood, Gwen corrected. And we're here to help. Help by not dying, Shakar said. Jem'Hadar are moving through Section 12, heading toward the reactor core. We think they're trying to plant explosives, blow the core, destroy the station. We have to stop them before they reach level 23. How many? Jack asked. At least 10, probably more. They're shrouding intermittently, making it impossible to get accurate counts. Shakar's expression was grim. We've lost 6 teams already trying to contain them. These aren't ordinary Jem'Hadar. These are Alphas, elite units. First wave shock troops. Jack's expression didn't change, but Gwen saw the calculation behind his eyes. 10-to-1 odds against elite soldiers in unfamiliar territory. Most commanders would call for retreat, regroup, wait for reinforcements. Jack wasn't most commanders. Tosh, can you track them with your modifications? He asked. Toshiko adjusted her tricorder, fingers flying across the interface. Thermal signatures are registering. I can give you approximate positions, but the shrouding causes intermittent dropouts. You'll have maybe 2 seconds of warning before they appear. 2 seconds is enough, Jack said. He looked at Shakar. Standard Starfleet tactics won't work here. They know your patterns, your protocols. You need to think like them, aggressive, brutal, no mercy. Can your people do that? Shakar's expression hardened. My brother died at the Locketcaw massacre. The Jem'Hadar killed everyone, civilians, children, medics. So yes, Captain Harkness. We can be brutal. Good, Jack said quietly. Then here's the plan. They moved through the corridors in staggered formation. Torchwood integrated with security team Delta like oil mixing with water, not perfectly, but functional. Jack took point with Shakar, both reading the tactical environment with the instincts of career soldiers. Gwen stayed with the middle group, phaser ready, covering blind corners. Ianto and 2 Starfleet officers held the rear, watching for flanking maneuvers. Owen moved with unnatural silence, his dead body making no sound, no breath, nothing to give away position. And Toshiko monitored her tricorder, calling out thermal signatures before they resolved into visible threats. Contact, Toshiko whispered. 30 meters ahead, Junction 14. 4 signatures. 3 Jem'Hadar, 1. I don't know what that is. Too small for Jem'Hadar, too organized for a captive. Vorta, Odo's voice crackled through Jack's combadge. They're overseeing the assault. Non-combatant, but dangerous. They coordinate Jem'Hadar tactics and can call for reinforcements. Jack held up a fist. The team stopped, weapons raised, breathing controlled. In the silence, they could hear it, footsteps. Heavy, rhythmic. The distinctive sound of Jem'Hadar warriors moving with purpose. Then shrouding activated. The footsteps continued, but the thermal signatures vanished from Toshiko's tricorder. They know we're here, Gwen breathed. Or they're being cautious, Jack replied. Either way, we can't let them reach the reactor. Shakar, flashbang grenades. Shrouding might hide them from sight, but it won't hide them from concussive force. On my mark. The air shimmered. A Jem'Hadar materialized 3 meters away, shrouding dropping as it raised a Polaron rifle. Its eyes were cold, calculating, already sighting on Jack's center mass. Jack fired first. The phaser beam caught the soldier in the chest, burning through armor and flesh. The Jem'Hadar staggered but didn't fall, its genetic conditioning pushing through fatal injury, rifle still tracking. Gwen's second shot took it in the head. It collapsed. Contact. Shakar shouted. The corridor erupted into chaos. 3 more Jem'Hadar materialized, shrouding dropping simultaneously. They moved with inhuman speed, centuries of genetic optimization making them faster, stronger, deadlier than human soldiers. Polaron fire lit the corridor in strobing purple-white flashes. A Bajoran officer screamed, her shoulder vaporized by a direct hit. Another went down, chest cavity burned open. Jack didn't flinch. He moved forward into the fire, phaser set to maximum, firing with the calm precision of someone who knew death was temporary. A Polaron beam caught him in the abdomen, burning through synthetic fabric and flesh. He felt the impact, the searing pain, the inevitable shutdown of biological systems. He kept firing. The Jem'Hadar soldier who shot him looked confused for exactly 1 second, long enough to register that its target wasn't falling, before Jack's return fire burned through its throat. Then Jack died. His body hit the deck. 2 seconds of silence. Then his eyes snapped open, the chest wound already closing, temporal energy knitting flesh back together in defiance of physics and biology and common sense. He rolled to cover, grabbed his phaser, kept firing. "What the hell?" one of the Starfleet officers breathed. "Keep shooting," Gwen shouted. She'd seen this before, lived with it, learned to fight alongside a man who made death meaningless. She covered Jack's resurrection with suppression fire, phaser beams forcing the Jem'Hadar back. Ianto moved with clinical efficiency, placing shots with the precision of years spent in Torchwood's archives learning to survive. One Jem'Hadar went down with a burned spine. Another took a phaser burst to the knee, collapsing as its leg gave out. Owen walked through the crossfire like he was strolling through Cardiff. Polaron beams passed through space he'd just occupied. He raised his phaser, fired once, dropped a Jem'Hadar with a headshot, and kept moving. Being dead had advantages. No survival instinct to override, no pain to distract, just cold tactical execution. Toshiko crouched behind cover, tricorder in one hand, phaser in the other. Two more signatures approaching from behind. They're trying to flank. Shakar spun, grenades already in hand. He threw them blindly around the corner, back toward the approaching heat signatures. Twin detonations shook the corridor. Screams. Jem'Hadar didn't scream often, but concussive force in enclosed spaces was democratic in its lethality. The shooting stopped. Smoke filled the air, acrid and chemical. Bodies lay scattered, Jem'Hadar, Starfleet, Bajoran. The cost of holding 12 meters of corridor. And standing in the middle of it, chest wound still sealing itself with unnatural speed, Jack Harkness lowered his phaser and smiled. "Is everyone?" He didn't finish the sentence. Shakar was down, blood pooling from a stomach wound. Two more security officers weren't moving. The Starfleet lieutenant who'd questioned Jack's presence was clutching her arm, phaser burns eating through flesh. "Medic," Gwen called into her comm badge. Section 12, Junction 14. "Multiple casualties." "Negative," Odo's voice replied. "All medical teams are engaged. Casualties will have to wait for. They'll be dead by then," Gwen snapped. Jack knelt beside Shakar, hands already applying pressure to the wound. The Bajoran's eyes were unfocused, breath shallow. Internal bleeding, massive trauma. Without immediate surgery, minutes at most. "Owen," Jack said quietly. Owen was already there, dead hand surprisingly steady as they assessed the damage. Perforated intestine, ruptured spleen, major arterial bleed. He needs surgical intervention now. But I can stabilize him. Maybe. If we've got the right supplies. "We have an emergency medical kit," one of the surviving officers said, pulling equipment from a wall panel. "But I don't know if." "I do," Owen said. His voice was flat, professional, the medical training that persisted beyond death. "I've done field surgery in worse conditions. But I need 5 minutes and absolute silence. Can you give me that?" Weapons fire echoed from deeper in the station. Closer than before. "We don't have 5 minutes, Ianto said, checking his phaser's charge. "More Jem'Hadar are coming." Jack looked down at Shakar, at the Bajoran officer who'd lost his brother to the Dominion and was now bleeding out in a corridor. Looked at his team, battered but alive. Looked at the junction ahead where reactor access lay waiting. "Gwen, Ianto, Tosh, you hold this position. Owen, save him. I'm going forward." "Alone?" Gwen's voice was sharp. "Jack, that's suicide." "I've died 4 times today already," Jack replied. "What's a few more?" He moved toward the reactor access, phaser raised, stepping over bodies and through smoke. Behind him, Owen worked with dead hands to save a life. Gwen called his name, but he kept moving. Because that's what Torchwood did. They walked forward. Into the fire. Into the dark. And they didn't stop until the job was done or they were dead. And sometimes, not even then. The reactor level was quieter than Jack expected. Not silent, the massive antimatter containment core hummed with barely restrained power, a sound that vibrated through deck plating and bone. But the absence of weapons fire, of combat, felt wrong. Jem'Hadar's soldiers didn't stop. They pushed forward until mission completion or death, whichever came first. Which meant they were already here. Jack moved through the accessway with his phaser raised, every sense alert. The corridor opened into the main reactor chamber, a cathedral of technology, 3 stories tall, dominated by the pulsing blue glow of matter-antimatter annihilation contained by magnetic fields. Catwalks crisscrossed the space. Control consoles lined the walls. And standing at the primary access terminal, working with focused intensity, was Vorta. Not alone. For Jem'Hadar's soldiers stood guard, weapons trained on approach vectors. They'd positioned themselves perfectly, overlapping fields of fire, no blind spots, disciplined military precision. And at the reactor's base, 3 more soldiers were planting something that looked disturbingly like explosives. Jack assessed the situation in 2 seconds. 5-to-1 odds, elevated positions, limited cover, and whatever those devices were, they were already active. Tactical retreat was the smart play. Regroup, bring reinforcements, coordinate with ops for a proper assault. Jack had never been particularly smart. He stepped into the open, phaser lowered, hands visible. Afternoon. Lovely reactor you've got here. Very blue. Extremely glowy. I'm actually in the market for a new power source, my last one got dimensionally displaced. You know how it is. The Jem'Hadar whipped around, rifles tracking him instantly. The Vorta looked up from her terminal, violet eyes widening slightly in recognition. The dimensional anomaly, she said. Her voice was melodious, pleasant in the way predators could be pleasant before they killed you. Specimen designate, Harkness 1. Subject profile indicates biological immortality through temporal fixation. Fascinating. She tilted her head. And incredibly foolish to present yourself alone. Yeah, I get that a lot, Jack agreed. He was scanning the room with peripheral vision, noting positions, calculating angles. The explosives at the reactor base were definitely armed, he could see countdown displays, 15 minutes, and dropping. So here's my question, why blow up the station when you could just beam us into space? Much cleaner, less collateral damage, probably better for intergalactic relations. The founders do not concern themselves with relations, the Vorta replied. Only with order. Your presence represents disorder. The device that brought you here represents a threat to dimensional stability. Both must be eliminated, along with any facility that might reverse engineer the technology. So you're destroying the station to make a point, Jack said. That's some serious scorched earth policy. Your bosses must be terrified of what we represent. The Vorta's smile was cold. The founders fear nothing. They simply remove threats before they metastasize. She gestured to the Jem'Hadar. Secure him. Alive, if possible. The founders may wish to study. Jack shot her. Maximum setting, direct hit, center mass. The Vorta's chest cavity vaporized. She collapsed without a sound, dead before her brain registered the betrayal of diplomacy. The Jem'Hadar opened fire. Jack dove behind a support column as polaron beams scorched the air where he'd been standing. He returned fire blind, phaser beams lighting the reactor chamber in strobing orange flashes. One Jem'Hadar went down. Another took a shot to the shoulder, staggered, kept coming. A polaron beam caught Jack in the leg. He felt bone shatter, felt himself falling, phaser spinning away across the deck. He hit the ground hard, vision blurring from shock and damage. A Jem'Hadar soldier loomed over him, rifle barrel pressing against his forehead. Victory is life, it intoned. Death is temporary, Jack replied, and died again. The soldier hesitated, just for a moment, confused by the certainty in a dead man's eyes. That moment cost it everything. Jack's eyes snapped open mid-resurrection, his hand already grabbing the rifle barrel, yanking it aside. The weapon discharged, polaron beam burning into deck plating. Jack rolled, his shattered leg already knitting back together, grabbed the Jem'Hadar's combat knife from its belt, and drove it up through the soldier's jaw into its brain. 2 down. 3 left, plus the demolition team at the reactor base. Jack retrieved his phaser and limped toward cover, legs still healing. Polaron fire chased him, burning through consoles and support beams. The Jem'Hadar were adapting, no longer confused by his resurrections, simply overwhelming him with concentrated fire. Then the door Jack had entered through hissed open. Phaser fire erupted from behind, coordinated, professional, devastating. 2 Jem'Hadar went down before they could turn. The third managed to pivot, got off 1 shot, then took 3 phaser beams simultaneously from different angles. Gwen charged through the doorway, Ianto right behind her, both firing with the practiced efficiency of Torchwood veterans. Behind them, Tashiko covered the entrance, tricorder scanning for additional threats. Told you to hold position, Jack called out, grinning despite the pain. You told me a lot of things over the years, Gwen shot back, taking cover beside him. When did I start listening? She glanced at his leg, saw it healing in real time, bone restructuring itself with visible temporal energy. How many times today? Lost count at 6, Jack admitted. He pointed toward the reactor base. Demolition team. 3 soldiers, armed explosives, 14 minutes on the clock. Ianto was already moving, circling around the catwalks with the methodical precision that had kept Torchwood's archives functioning through apocalypses. He flanked the Jem'Hadar position, phaser fire forcing them into cover. 1 soldier returned fire, polaron beams slicing through a support cable. The catwalk groaned, metal stress fractures spreading. The reactor's unstable, Tashiko called out, studying her tricorder. Those explosives, they're not just bombs. They're configured to destabilize the magnetic containment fields. If they detonate, the matter-antimatter reaction will cascade. The explosion won't just destroy the station. It'll create a subspace rupture that could collapse the wormhole. Collateral damage on a cosmic scale, Gwen breathed. They're willing to destroy their own strategic asset just to kill us. Not just us, Jack said, understanding dawning. The wormhole. The prophets. They're threatening the celestial temple to force the Bajorans into compliance. Blow the station, blame dimensional contamination, make it look like we caused the disaster. The founders eliminate a threat and gain leverage over Bajorans in one move. Brilliant and genocidal, Ianto observed from his position. Rather on brand for fascist empires. The Jem'Hadar at the reactor base finished their work. The explosives armed with an ominous triple beep. 13 minutes. They turned to engage, shrouding activating, thermal signatures vanishing. Tosh, I need positions. Gwen shouted. I can't get a lock, the reactor's interference is masking thermal output. They could be anywhere in a 30-meter radius. The air shimmered. A Jem'Hadar materialized directly behind Tashiko, rifle raised. She spun, too slow, phaser coming up but not fast enough. Owen appeared from nowhere, moving with the silent grace of the dead. He grabbed the Jem'Hadar's rifle barrel, yanked it aside, and drove his fist into the soldier's throat. Not a killing blow for a normal person, but Owen's dead hands had no biological limiters, no pain response telling them to hold back. The Jem'Hadar's trachea collapsed. It staggered, still fighting, still trying to complete its mission even as it suffocated. Owen shot it in the head. Clinical. Efficient. Emotionless. Medical team stabilized the Bajoran officer, Owen reported, as if discussing weather rather than combat. I came to provide additional tactical support. Seemed like you'd need it. Good timing, Tashiko gasped. Thank you. Don't thank me, Owen said. I'm just making sure I don't end up alone in this universe. Dying once was bad enough. 2 Jem'Hadar left. Shrouded. Invisible. And 12 minutes until the reactor exploded. Jack studied the chamber, thinking tactically. Shrouding made them invisible to sensors and sight, but it didn't make them ghosts. They still had mass, still displaced air, still had to move through physical space. And they had to protect those explosives. Iento, Jack called out. The catwalk. Can you collapse it? Iento looked up at the damaged support cables, calculating stress points with the eye of someone who'd spent years maintaining Torchwood's crumbling infrastructure. Possibly. If I cut the secondary supports and overload the structural field generator. Do it. Gwen, Owen, Tosh, suppression fire on the reactor base. Don't aim for targets, aim for everything. Make them reveal themselves or get crushed. They opened fire. Phaser beams crisscrossed the chamber, burning through consoles, equipment, deck plating. Indiscriminate destruction, the opposite of Starfleet precision. And it worked. Air shimmered as the Jem'Hadar moved, trying to avoid the random fire pattern, shrouding flickering under stress. Iento found the structural generator, pried open the access panel, and systematically overloaded every safety protocol. The catwalk groaned. Metal screamed. Support cables snapped with sounds like gunshots. The catwalk collapsed. 20 tons of metal and equipment crashed down onto the reactor base. 1 Jem'Hadar was caught directly underneath, crushed instantly. The other materialized at the last second, shrouding dropping, diving clear. And landed directly in Jack's line of fire. The phaser beam took it through the heart. It collapsed, weapon clattering away, genetically bred determination finally insufficient against catastrophic organ failure. Silence. Except for the reactor's hum and the countdown on the explosives. 11 minutes. Jack limped toward the devices, leg fully healed now but phantom pain still lingering. Gwen was beside him immediately, covering his approach. The explosives were sophisticated. Dominion technology, antimatter-based, configured to create resonance cascades in the magnetic containment fields. And they were locked, encrypted, designed to prevent tampering. Tosh, can you disarm these? Jack asked. Toshiko knelt beside the devices, tricorder scanning at maximum resolution. The encryption it's like nothing I've ever seen. The Dominion uses quantum-locked security protocols. I'd need hours to break it, maybe days. We have 11 minutes. Then we can't disarm them, Toshiko said quietly. Not conventionally. Jack stared at the countdown. 10 minutes, 47 seconds. He could call ops, bring in O'Brien's engineering expertise. Could evacuate the reactor level, seal the bulkheads, pray the containment held. Could transport the explosives into space, except the Jem'Hadar would have designed for that, would have included transport inhibitors or deadman switches. Or he could do what Torchwood always did when regulations failed. Everyone out, Jack ordered. Clear the reactor level. Now. What are you planning? Gwen asked, voice tight with recognition. The Jem'Hadar said I'm a temporal anomaly, Jack replied. My resurrection releases temporal energy, we've all seen it. Energy that rewrites causality, that forces reality to bend around a fixed point in time. He looked at the explosives. What if I channel that energy into these devices? Not to disarm them. To temporarily desynchronize them from the timeline. That's insane, Toshiko said. You're talking about creating a localized temporal paradox. You don't know what that would do to me. Jack smiled, and it was sad. I'm already a walking paradox, Tosh. I died and got brought back wrong. I'm a fixed point that shouldn't exist. One more temporal violation won't change that. It could kill you permanently, Owen said. Temporal energy against temporal energy. The interaction could destabilize whatever's keeping you fixed. You could become unfixed. Properly dead. Or it could work, Jack countered. And we saved the station, the wormhole, and everyone on DS9. Jack, no, Gwen started. Get out, Jack said, voice hardening. That's an order. All of you. Go. They hesitated. Then Ianto grabbed Toshiko's arm, pulling her toward the exit. Owen followed, dead legs carrying him toward the door with mechanical efficiency. Gwen stayed, tears streaming down her face. I can't watch you die again, she whispered. Not permanently. Not after everything. Then don't watch, Jack said gently. Go help the others. Protect them. And Gwen. He caught her eyes. If this doesn't work, if I don't come back, tell them about Torchwood. Tell them we tried to be better than we were. Tell them we died protecting people who didn't even know we existed. Make it mean something. Gwen nodded, unable to speak, and ran. Jack was alone with the explosives. 9 minutes, 12 seconds. The reactor hummed around him, barely contained annihilation, power enough to fuel a city or destroy a sector. He placed his hands on the nearest explosive, feeling the quantum-locked encryption resisting all conventional interference. Then he reached inside himself, to the place where temporal energy lived. The fixed point that made him immortal, that forced reality to resurrect him regardless of injury or circumstance. He'd never deliberately accessed it before. Had never tried to weaponize his own existence. There was always a first time. Jack died. But this time, he didn't let go. He held on to consciousness through the death, through the biological shutdown, through the moment when temporal energy flooded his cells to resurrect him. And instead of letting that energy dissipate naturally, he pushed it outward, into the explosives. Reality screamed. The devices flickered, caught between armed and disarmed, between existing in the present and being erased from the timeline. Jack felt the temporal energy tearing at him, trying to rip him apart at the quantum level. His fixed point status warred with the Dominion technology's encryption, causality looping and relooping, paradox multiplying paradox. He died again. And again. Each death releasing more energy, each resurrection pushing deeper into temporal impossibility. The countdown stopped. Then reversed. Then stopped again, numbers flickering between values, unable to settle on a single timeline. Jack's body was burning, flesh and bone breaking down under temporal stress. He was dying faster than he could resurrect, caught in an infinite loop of death and rebirth, the fixed point stretching toward its breaking point. Then, with a sound like reality tearing, the explosive simply ceased to exist. Not disarmed. Not destroyed. Erased from the timeline, pulled into temporal non-existence, as if they'd never been placed at all. Jack collapsed. His body was a wreck, third-degree burns, radiation poisoning, cellular damage from temporal exposure. He felt himself dying one more time, felt the resurrection energy gathering. And stopped feeling anything at all. Jack woke to the smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of medical equipment. Not sounds from his universe, no familiar hum of Cardiff's medical bay, no Torchwood technology jury-rigged into life support. These were Starfleet systems, efficient and precise, monitoring vitals with the kind of attention to detail that suggested someone expected him to die at any moment. He opened his eyes. The infirmary ceiling was generic Federation design, clean, sterile, utterly forgettable. Dr. Julian Bashir stood beside the biobed, studying a medical readout with intense concentration. The doctor's genetically enhanced mind was clearly wrestling with data that didn't make sense. How long? Jack's voice came out rough, damaged. Bashir looked up, startled. 4 hours. You were clinically dead for 3 minutes and 47 seconds. No heartbeat, no neural activity, cellular breakdown consistent with catastrophic temporal radiation exposure. He paused. Then you just restarted. As if someone flipped a switch. Your cells regenerated, organs reconstructed themselves, even bone marrow regrew from nothing. It's medically impossible. Welcome to my life, Jack said. He tried to sit up, winced at the phantom pain. His body was healed, he could feel that. But the memory of dying that many times in rapid succession lingered like a bruise on his soul. The explosives? Erased from existence, according to Chief O'Brien's reports. One moment they were armed and counting down, the next they simply weren't there. Not disarmed, not transported, removed from the timeline entirely. Bashir's voice carried scientific fascination warring with ethical horror. You created a localized temporal paradox using your own resurrection energy as a catalyst. Do you understand how dangerous that was? You could have destabilized causality for the entire sector. But I didn't, Jack replied. The station's still here. The wormhole's still intact. And the Jem'Hadar assault failed. Sounds like a win to me. 37 dead, Bashir said quietly. Starfleet security, Bajoran militia, 3 civilians caught in crossfire. That's the cost of your win. Jack met his eyes. How many would have died if the reactor exploded? How many if the wormhole collapsed? Sometimes you don't get clean victories, Doctor. Sometimes you just get fewer casualties than the alternative. He swung his legs off the bio bed, ignoring Bashir's protests. Where's my team? Conference room B, Captain Sisko wants to debrief everyone involved in the assault. Bashir stepped back, allowing Jack to stand. But Captain Harkness. Whatever you did down there, whatever temporal violation you committed, Starfleet's going to have questions. Serious questions. They always do, Jack said, and walked out. Conference room B was packed. Sisko sat at the head of the table, flanked by Kira and Dax. Odo stood near the door, expression unreadable. O'Brien occupied a side seat, still wearing the grime and exhaustion of combat engineering. And scattered around the table, looking distinctly out of place among Starfleet uniforms, were the members of Torchwood. Gwen's eyes found Jack immediately, relief flooding her features before professional composure reasserted itself. Ianto sat with perfect posture, suit somehow still immaculate despite hours of combat. Tashiko clutched a PADD, knuckles white, probably running calculations on what Jack had done in the reactor chamber. Owen leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, the picture of bored indifference that only the dead could manage. Captain Harkness, Sisko said, voice neutral. I'm glad you're recovered. Please, sit. Jack took the empty chair beside Gwen. Captain Sisko. Sorry about the mess. Dimensional refugees tend to bring complications. Complications. Kira's voice was sharp. You destroyed Dominion explosives by erasing them from the timeline. Chief O'Brien says the temporal readings from that event were off the scale. Whatever you did, it registered on sensors 3 sectors away. You essentially set off a temporal flare visible to everyone in the quadrant. Which means the Dominion knows their assault failed, Dax added. And they know why. They'll want to study you, Captain Harkness. Understand how you did it. And if they can't study you, they'll settle for dissection. Not my first time being hunted by an empire, Jack said easily. Won't be my last. That's remarkably cavalier for someone who just painted a target on this entire station, Odo said coldly. The Dominion doesn't forget. They don't forgive. They eliminate threats with methodical efficiency. You've made Deep Space Nine a priority target. We were already a target, Sisko said, cutting through the tension. The Dominion sent ships to destroy us the moment Torchwood arrived. Captain Harkness simply ensured we survived. Whatever the consequences, we're alive to face them. He leaned forward. But Constable Odo isn't wrong. Your presence has escalated this situation significantly. I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Jack glanced at his team, then back to Sisko. You want the full briefing? Fine. We're Torchwood 3, Cardiff branch. In our universe, Earth has been experiencing alien contact for centuries, usually hostile. Our job was to monitor the Cardiff Rift, a tear in spacetime that dumps alien refugees, technology, and threats onto our planet regularly. We salvage what we can, contain what we can't, and occasionally save the world when nobody else can. You're intelligence operatives, Odo said. We're survivors, Gwen corrected. We work outside the law because the law wasn't designed for what we face. Governments change, politicians come and go, but alien threats don't care about jurisdiction or proper procedure. Torchwood does what's necessary. Including memory alteration, Odo said, producing a PADD. We analyzed the contents of your salvage. Among the materials were quantities of a pharmaceutical compound labeled retcon, a drug designed to selectively erase memories. You drugged civilians to cover up alien encounters. Gwen's jaw tightened. Yes. We did. Because the alternative was mass panic, societal collapse, and governments weaponizing alien technology for war. We made hard choices. Sometimes wrong choices. But we were trying to protect people. By lying to them, Kira said. By deciding they couldn't handle the truth. You have a prime directive that forbids sharing your technology with pre-warp civilizations, Ianto said quietly. You've watched entire species suffer because interfering would violate your principles. How is that morally superior to our methods? The room went silent. Dax broke it, voice thoughtful, it's not about moral superiority. It's about different approaches to the same problem. How do you protect people without taking away their agency? The prime directive errs on the side of non-interference. Torchwood erred on the side of control. She looked at Jack. Both approaches have costs. The question is whether you're willing to acknowledge yours. Jack met her eyes. Every day. Every person we retconned, every truth we buried, every time we chose expedience over ethics, I remember them all. Being immortal means living with your mistakes forever. Trust me, I'm intimately familiar with cost. Sisko studied him for a long moment. I believe you. But belief doesn't solve our immediate problem. The Dominion knows about you. They'll be back with more ships, better tactics, and a singular focus on acquiring or eliminating your technology. We need a plan. Send us away, Tashiko said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. She set down her PADD, voice steady despite obvious exhaustion. You have transporter technology. Beam us to an uninhabited planet, a remote colony, anywhere far from strategic targets. We'll take our salvaged equipment, disappear, and the Dominion will have no reason to threaten this station. And what happens when they find you? O'Brien asked. Because they will. You're not trained for wilderness survival in hostile territory. We've survived worse, Owen said flatly. Cardiff's rift threw everything from dinosaurs to cybernetic assassins at us. We adapted. We'll adapt here. That's not a plan, it's suicide, Kira said. It's strategic withdrawal, Ianto corrected. Torchwood has always operated from the shadows. We don't need infrastructure or support, we need purpose and resources. Give us our salvage, basic survival equipment, and transport to somewhere remote. We'll handle the rest. Sisko shook his head. I'm not abandoning refugees to die alone on some rock because the Dominion made threats. That's not who we are. Then what do you suggest? Gwen asked. We can't stay here. We're putting everyone at risk. And we can't go home, our rift manipulator is destroyed, and even if we could repair it, the energy requirements would be astronomical. Dax's fingers had been dancing across her PADD throughout the conversation. Now she looked up, expression thoughtful. Actually, about that. I've been analyzing the readings from your arrival. The interaction between your rift technology and the Bajoran Wormhole created a unique dimensional signature. It's possible, not certain, but possible, that we could recreate those conditions in a controlled environment. You're talking about opening another dimensional breach, Odo said, alarm in his voice. After what happened last time? Not opening, Dax clarified. Replicating. If we can generate a stable rift using the wormhole's natural properties as a catalyst and Torchwood's remaining technology as a template, we might be able to send them home. Hope flickered across Gwen's face. Then reality reasserted itself. How long would that take? Weeks, at minimum. Possibly months. The wormhole is sacred to the Bajorans, the celestial temple of the prophets. Any experimentation would require religious approval, engineering miracles, and time we may not have. Dax looked at Sisko. But it's theoretically possible. Months of Torchwood living on this station, Kira said. With the Dominion actively hunting them. With Section 31 probably taking an interest, she paused at Sisko's sharp look. Don't tell me you haven't thought about it, Benjamin. Section 31 monitors all unusual activity. Dimensional refugees with temporal technology and a man who can't die. They're already watching. Section 31, Jack repeated slowly. That's your intelligence service? The one that operates outside Federation law. We don't talk about Section 31, Sisko said firmly. They're a phantom organization that may or may not exist, and either way, they're not relevant to this discussion. They're absolutely relevant, Jack said. Because organizations like that are exactly the kind of people who'd see us as assets or threats. And in my experience, both classifications end with bodies. He stood, pacing the small conference room. Here's what I know. We're trapped in your universe, the Dominion wants us dead, your mysterious intelligence service probably wants to recruit or dissect us, and our presence is endangering everyone on this station. That about cover it? Succinct, Sisko agreed. So here's what we do, Jack continued. We make ourselves useful. You need bodies for the war effort. We've got combat experience. You need intelligence on unconventional threats. We've spent our careers dealing with the impossible. You need someone willing to operate in the gray areas where Starfleet regulations become inconvenient. He smiled. We specialize in that. You're offering your services, Sisko said carefully. I'm offering partnership. We help you win this war. You help us get home. Mutual benefit, mutual trust, and maybe, just maybe, we all survive this. Jack leaned on the table. Captain, I know we're not Starfleet. We don't share your ideals, we don't play by your rules, and we sure as hell don't trust authority. But we do protect people. That's what Torchwood was always supposed to be about. Give us that chance. The room fell silent. Sisko looked around the table, at Kira's skepticism, at Dax's scientific curiosity, at Odo's rigid disapproval, at O'Brien's pragmatic assessment. Then he looked at Torchwood. Battered, exhausted, dangerous people who'd somehow saved his station despite being strangers to this universe. Provisional authorization, Sisko said finally. You'll integrate with station operations under strict supervision. Odo will monitor your activities. Any use of your technology requires approval. Any missions off-station require tactical briefing and Starfleet liaison. And if you violate Federation law, if you use memory alteration drugs, if you compromise this station's security, I will personally throw you in a holding cell and let the Dominion have what's left. Are we clear? Crystal, Jack said. One more thing, Sisko added. Your weapons, your salvage technology, your temporal devices, they all go into secure storage. You'll have access under supervision, but I won't have unsecured alien artifacts floating around my station. Chief O'Brien will catalog everything and establish containment protocols. O'Brien nodded. Already started, sir. Some of the items are concerning. That resurrection gauntlet Captain Harkness mentioned. It's emitting low-level necromantic energy that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of physics. And there's something labeled portable prison cell that contains. He paused, checking his PADD. Something. The sensors can't identify what's inside, but whatever it is, it's conscious and extremely hostile. The prisoner's been contained for 18 months, Ianto said. It's from our universe's version of, well, you don't have a reference point. Let's just say it's dangerous and leave it at that. Comforting, Odo said dryly. I'll assign security to the storage bay. Permanent guard, rotating shifts, shoot first protocols if containment fails. I've got a better idea, Jack said. Owen, you're already dead. Assign you to guard duty and the prisoner can't kill what's not alive. Plus, you're the only one who won't go insane from prolonged exposure to that thing's psychic emanations. Owen shrugged. Sure. Not like I need sleep anymore. Might as well spend my eternity staring at a locked box. That's settled then, Sisko said. We'll reconvene in 12 hours for full mission briefings. Until then, you're confined to quarters under station security protocols. Dismissed. Everyone stood. As Torchwood filed toward the door, Sisko's voice stopped Jack. Captain Harkness. A word. Jack waited as the room emptied. When it was just the two of them, Sisko said quietly, you died 17 times during the Jem'Hadar assault. Dr. Bashir counted. 17 deaths in 4 hours, and you kept fighting. That's not courage. That's something else entirely. It's necessity, Jack replied. Death doesn't mean anything to me anymore. So I use it. As a weapon, as a shield, as whatever the mission requires. The alternative is letting good people die when I could have stopped it. And what happens when death stops being temporary? Sisko asked. When the fixed point fails and you finally stay dead. Jack smiled, and it was haunted. Then I'll finally get to rest. Until then, Captain, I'll keep dying so others don't have to. That's what Torchwood does. That's what I do. The universe made me immortal for a reason. Might as well make it count. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing. Your station has a wormhole that connects to aliens you call prophets. Non-linear beings who exist outside time. Has anyone ever asked them about dimensional crossovers? About whether our arrival was accident or design? Sisko's expression went carefully blank. The prophets don't explain themselves to linear beings. They guide, they test, they influence, but they don't share their reasoning. Sounds familiar, Jack said. The Doctor was like that. Brilliant, ancient, impossible to pin down. Saved the universe repeatedly and never explained why. He met Sisko's eyes. Maybe your prophets brought us here for a reason. Or maybe we're just cosmic debris caught in their wake. Either way, I've learned that when godlike beings take an interest, you don't question it. You just survive. He left. Sisko stood alone in the conference room, staring at the door. Then his comm badge chirped. Sisko here. Benjamin, it's Jake. His son's voice was tight with controlled fear. There's someone here to see you. He says he's from Starfleet intelligence, but Dad, there's something wrong about him. He knows things about Torchwood. Things we haven't reported yet. Sisko's blood went cold. Section 31. They'd moved faster than he'd expected. I'm on my way, he said, already moving. Don't let him leave. And Jake? Be careful what you say around him. Because if Section 31 was taking an interest in Torchwood, then the real complications were just beginning. And Deep Space Nine was about to discover that Starfleet's shadows ran deeper than anyone wanted to admit. The man waiting in Sisko's office looked like every other Starfleet intelligence operative, nondescript features, forgettable face, the kind of person you'd pass in a corridor and never remember. He wore a standard operations uniform with commander's pips, hands folded neatly in his lap, posture suggesting infinite patience. But his eyes were wrong. Too calculating. Too aware of every angle, every weakness, every tactical advantage in the room. Jake stood near the replicator, clearly uncomfortable. Sisko entered, gestured for his son to leave. Jake hesitated, then complied, throwing one last concerned look over his shoulder. When the door sealed, the man smiled. Captain Sisko. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. I don't believe I had a choice, Sisko replied, moving behind his desk but not sitting. Power dynamics. Control of space. Basic interrogation tactics. You are Commander Heron, Starfleet Intelligence, assigned to deep space anomalies and unconventional threats. The man pulled out a PADD, tapped it once. Though between us, Captain, I think we both know my actual affiliation. Section 31, Sisko said flatly. An organization that doesn't officially exist, Heron agreed pleasantly. But hypothetically, if such an organization did exist, it would be very interested in dimensional refugees carrying temporal technology and demonstrating biological immortality. Especially when those refugees single-handedly prevented a Dominion assault through methods that violate several laws of physics. Captain Harkness saved this station. Captain Harkness created a temporal paradox visible across 3 sectors, Heron corrected. The Dominion isn't the only power that noticed. The Romulans have increased surveillance along the neutral zone. The Tholians transmitted a formal complaint about dimensional contamination. And certain elements within Starfleet Command are asking very pointed questions about why Deep Space Nine is harboring individuals who shouldn't exist. Sisko sat down slowly. What does Section 31 want? The same thing we always want. To protect the Federation from threats that Starfleet's principles won't allow it to address directly. Heron leaned forward. Torchwood represents a unique opportunity. They operate outside conventional authority. They possess technology we've never encountered. They have experience with threats, temporal anomalies, dimensional incursions, hostile entities, that could give us critical advantages in the Dominion War. And they're led by a man who literally cannot die. You want to recruit them, Sisko said. We want to offer them resources, support, and purpose in a universe where they have none of those things. Heron's voice was reasonable, persuasive, exactly the tone that made Section 31 so dangerous. Think about it, Captain. Torchwood is stranded here. They're displaced, vulnerable, hunted by the Dominion. We can offer them protection, equipment, intelligence support, everything they need to operate effectively. In exchange, they provide services that benefit Federation security. What kind of services? The kind that don't end up in official reports, Heron said simply. Assassination of Dominion leadership. Sabotage operations behind enemy lines. Recovery of dangerous artifacts before hostile powers acquire them. All the necessary work that Starfleet can't be seen doing. He pulled up a holographic display from his PADD, tactical assessments, personnel profiles, strategic recommendations. Captain Harkness has 173 years of combat experience. Gwen Cooper spent 3 years with Cardiff Police before Torchwood recruitment. She understands law enforcement and intelligence work. Ianto Jones maintained their archives, which suggests information management and operational security skills. Toshiko Sato is a technological genius. And Owen Harper, he paused, is medically dead but operationally functional. An asset that can infiltrate environments lethal to living beings. They're people, not assets, Sisko said coldly. They're survivors who will do whatever it takes to accomplish their mission, Heron countered. That's exactly what Section 31 needs. And frankly, Captain, it's what they need too. Purpose. Direction. A reason to keep fighting in a universe that isn't their own. By turning them into assassins. By giving them the opportunity to be what they've always been, protectors operating in the shadows. Heron stood, smoothing his uniform. I'm not asking for your approval, Captain Sisko. I'm informing you as a professional courtesy. Section 31 will make contact with Torchwood. We'll offer them resources and recruitment. What they choose to do with that offer is their decision. And if I forbid contact? Sisko asked, knowing the answer. Then we'll work around you, Heron said pleasantly. Section 31 operates independent of conventional chain of command. We've been protecting the Federation since its inception, and will continue doing so regardless of individual commanders' objections. He moved toward the door, paused. For what it's worth, Captain. I hope Torchwood chooses to work with us. They're good people caught in an impossible situation. We can help them. The question is whether you'll stand in the way of that help. He left. Sisko sat in silence, staring at nothing. Section 31's interest changed everything. If they recruited Torchwood, he'd lose any ability to monitor or influence their operations. They'd become ghosts, operating in the Federation's shadow, doing the wet work that Section 31 specialized in. And Jack Harkness, with his centuries of experience and complete disregard for death, would become one of the most dangerous operatives in the Alpha Quadrant. Unless Sisko could offer something better. Torchwood's temporary quarters were cramped but functional, standard station accommodations for displaced personnel. Jack sat on the edge of a bunk, cleaning his confiscated phaser rifle with practiced efficiency. Gwen paced near the viewport, watching the Bajoran Wormhole pulse with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. Ianto made tea using the replicator, somehow making the synthetic beverage taste almost authentic. Toshiko worked at a small desk, running calculations on a borrowed PADD. Owen stared at nothing, the way only the dead could stare, present but not really there. The door chimed. Jack set down the rifle. Come. Captain Sisko entered alone, no security escort, no aggressive posturing. That spoke volumes about his tactical assessment and personal courage. Captain, Jack said, standing. To what do we owe the pleasure? Section 31 just paid me a visit, Sisko said without preamble. They're interested in recruiting you. The room went very quiet. Section 31, Jack repeated. Your phantom intelligence service that definitely doesn't exist. The same. Sisko studied each of them in turn. They see you as assets. Experienced operators who can do the work that Starfleet's principles won't allow. Assassination, sabotage, covert operations in hostile territory. They'll offer you resources, support, and purpose. And they'll use you until you're dead or compromised, then disavow any knowledge of your existence. Sounds familiar, Gwen said bitterly. Torchwood was the same. Use people up, throw them away, pretend the cost was worth it. Exactly, Sisko said. Which is why I'm here to offer an alternative. Jack crossed his arms. I'm listening. Work with Deep Space Nine. Officially. Not as Section 31 assets, but as specialized consultants attached to this station. You'll have access to Federation resources, intelligence networks, and scientific support for repairing your rift manipulator. In exchange, you provide expertise on temporal anomalies, dimensional threats, and unconventional tactics. Sisko's voice was firm. You'll operate under my authority, subject to oversight, and bound by Federation law. No assassinations. No memory alteration. No disappearing into the shadows to do work we can't acknowledge. You're asking us to join Starfleet, Ianto said. I'm asking you to maintain your integrity, Sisko corrected. Torchwood fell apart because it operated without accountability. You've all seen what happens when good intentions meet zero oversight, people die, lines blur, and eventually you can't tell the difference between protection and oppression. He looked directly at Jack. You said you wanted to be better than you were. Here's your chance. Work with us, not for shadowy handlers who'll discard you the moment you're inconvenient. Jack was silent for a long moment. Then, what's the catch? The catch is that you'll have to trust us, Sisko said. Trust that Starfleet's principles aren't just naive idealism. Trust that working within the law produces better outcomes than operating outside it. Trust that transparency and accountability make you stronger, not weaker. We tried trust, Gwen said quietly. Trusted the government, trusted our handlers, trusted the system. It failed us every time. Then don't trust the system, Sisko replied. Trust me. As one commander to another, as one person who's seen the darkness to another, I'm offering you a chance to do the right thing the right way. No compromises. No moral shortcuts. Just honest work protecting people who can't protect themselves. Toshiko looked up from her PADD. And if we say no? If we decide Section 31's offer is more practical? Then I'll respect your choice, Sisko said. I won't stop you. But I will tell you that once you go down that path, there's no coming back. Section 31 doesn't do redemption arcs. They use people until they break, then they erase them from memory. Is that really what you want? Owen laughed, a sound like dead leaves scraping concrete. Bit late for redemption in my case, Captain. I'm already a walking corpse. Might as well be useful. Being useful and being exploited are different things, Sisko said. And Dr. Harper, you're not a weapon just because you can't die again. You're still a person. Still someone with value beyond tactical utility. Pretty words, Owen said. But I've heard pretty words before. Right before Torchwood threw me into situations that got me killed. Then prove them wrong, Sisko challenged. Prove that you're more than what they made you. All of you. He looked around the room. I know what it's like to be used by organizations that see you as chess pieces. I've fought that battle. And I'm telling you, the only way to win is to refuse to play their game. Build something better. Be something better. Jack stood, walked to the viewport beside Gwen, stared out at the wormhole. You know what the doctor used to say? In 900 years of time and space, I've never met anyone who wasn't important. Every person matters. Every choice counts. Every action ripples outward. He turned back to Sisko. Torchwood forgot that. We started seeing threats instead of people. Started making calculated sacrifices instead of impossible saves. We became what we were fighting against. So don't repeat that mistake, Sisko said simply. Silence filled the room. Then Gwen spoke, voice breaking slightly, I'm so tired of the shadows, Jack. Tired of lying, tired of covering up, tired of doing terrible things and calling it necessary. If Captain Sisko's offering a chance to work in the light, she met Jack's eyes. Maybe we should take it. Iento? Jack asked. The archivist set down his tea. Torchwood 3 was built on the ruins of Torchwood 1 and 2. Both fell because they prioritized results over ethics. If we have a chance to do this differently, to actually be what Torchwood was supposed to be, he nodded slowly. I'm in. Tosh. I joined Torchwood because I wanted to make a difference, Toshiko said. I stayed because I believed we were protecting people. If we can do that here, properly, with oversight and accountability, she smiled slightly. The scientist in me appreciates the experimental nature. New universe, new approach, new outcome. Owen. The dead man stared at nothing for a long moment. Then, I'm already damned. Might as well be damned for trying to do right instead of just surviving. Jack turned to Sisko. Provisional acceptance. We work with you, under your authority, with full transparency. But if your Federation proves as corrupt as our governments, if Section 31 starts pulling strings, if we're ordered to stand down while people die because of regulations, we reserve the right to walk away. Fair enough, Sisko said. He extended his hand. Welcome to Deep Space Nine, Captain Harkness. Jack shook it. Let's hope we don't regret this. In the shadows of the cargo bay where Torchwood's salvaged equipment lay under guard, something stirred. The portable prison cell, that innocuous container that O'Brien's sensors couldn't penetrate, pulsed once with energy that registered on no known spectrum. Inside, the prisoner felt the dimensional barriers weakening. Felt the presence of beings from another reality, beings whose arrival had torn holes in the fabric of this universe. And it smiled, because dimensional tears meant opportunity. Meant escape. Meant freedom to spread across this new reality like cancer through healthy tissue. But patience was required. The prisoner had waited 18 months in Torchwood's custody. It could wait a few days more. Could watch. Could learn. Could identify the perfect moment to break free and show these Federation fools what true horror looked like. Owen Harper stood his guard shift, dead eyes staring at the prison cell, unaware that what lay inside was studying him with equal intensity. Calculating. Planning. Waiting. And in the station's computer core, buried in subroutines that no one would think to check, a fragment of code activated. Jack's perception filter, the one he'd palmed during initial transport, had been quietly mapping DS9 systems for hours. Not maliciously. Just, habitually. Old Torchwood instincts dying hard. The code identified security protocols, communication networks, sensitive data repositories. It cataloged and encrypted and stored everything in a hidden partition, insurance against the day when trust might prove insufficient. Because Jack Harkness had learned long ago that hope was wonderful, trust was valuable, but backup plans kept you alive. And in this universe, staying alive, or at least, staying useful, was all that mattered. 3 days after Torchwood's official integration with Deep Space Nine, Odo discovered the perception filter code. He'd been running routine security audits when he noticed anomalous subroutines in the station's computer core, nothing overtly malicious, but present nonetheless. Code that shouldn't exist, mapping systems with the thoroughness of professional intelligence work. He traced it back to its point of origin, the transporter room where Torchwood had first materialized. Odo stood in Sisko's office, his expression harder than usual. Captain Harkness planted surveillance software the moment he arrived. It's been quietly cataloging our security protocols, communication frequencies, personnel files, everything. Sisko's jaw tightened. Is it transmitting data off the station? No. It's self-contained, encrypted, stored in a hidden partition that requires Torchwood biometric authorization to access. It's not espionage in the traditional sense. Odo paused. It's insurance. A backup plan in case things go wrong. Which means he never fully trusted us, Kira said from her position near the viewport. Even after the speech about working together, about transparency, he was hedging his bets. Can you blame him? Dax asked from her science station. She'd been analyzing the code structure, impressed despite herself. From his perspective, he's stranded in an alternate universe surrounded by strangers who could turn hostile at any moment. The perception filter is protection, not betrayal. It's a violation of trust, Odo countered. Captain Sisko offered them legitimate partnership. They responded with covert surveillance. Sisko stood, moving to the window overlooking the promenade. Below, he could see Jack Harkness walking with Gwen Cooper, both carrying equipment toward the cargo bay where O'Brien was attempting to analyze Rift technology. They looked relaxed, professional, integrated. But underneath that surface cooperation, apparently, lay contingencies. Bring him in, Sisko ordered. Quietly. No security escort, no public confrontation. I want to understand his reasoning before I decide how to respond. 20 minutes later, Jack entered Ops alone. He took one look at Odo's expression, at the tactical display showing the perception filter's code architecture, and smiled ruefully. "You found it," he said. "Took longer than I expected, actually. Your security's pretty good." "Explain," Sisko said quietly. Jack leaned against the railing, hands spread. "Old habits. Torchwood operated in hostile territory for over a century. We survived by having escape routes, backup plans, and intelligence on everyone around us. Trust was something you earned over years, not days. So yes, I planted a perception filter the moment I arrived. It's what I've done on every op since the 51st century. Collect information, secure exits, prepare for things to go wrong. We're not your enemies," Kira said. "I know. But you could become enemies. Not maliciously, just through changed circumstances, political pressure, or Section 31 interference." Jack met Sisko's eyes. "Captain, you offered us partnership. I accepted. But I've seen partnerships dissolve when convenient. I've watched allies become threats when resources grew scarce or politics shifted. The perception filter isn't an attack. It's survival instinct. It's a violation of the trust you claimed to want," Odo said coldly. "You can't demand transparency while maintaining secret surveillance." "You're right," Jack said simply. "I can't. Which is why I'm not demanding transparency anymore. I'm asking for it. And I'm offering the same in return." He pulled out a small device, crystalline technology, nothing like Federation design. "This is the access key to the perception filter. Take it. Review everything it's collected. You'll find personnel assessments, security protocols, and evacuation routes. Nothing weaponized. Nothing malicious. Just information I thought might keep my team alive if things went south." He placed it on Sisko's desk. "And then what?" Sisko asked. "You plant another filter. Create new backdoors. Then I trust you," Jack said. "Properly. Completely. Because you've proven I can." "Or," he paused. "You prove I can't, and we have a different conversation about what partnership actually means." Sisko picked up the device, turning it over. It was beautiful in its simplicity. Technology from centuries ahead of Federation science, miniaturized and elegant. "Chief, can you analyze this?" O'Brien appeared from his engineering station, took the device, and whistled low. "This is incredible work. 51st century you said. The power cell alone is something we couldn't replicate. And the encryption," he tapped controls. "It's biometrically locked to Captain Harkness, but he set it to accept command-level authorization from DS9 personnel. He's not lying, Captain. This really is a complete handover. So what do we do with it?" Kira asked. "We destroy it," Odo said immediately. "Eliminate the surveillance, establish consequences for future violations, and make clear that trust is non-negotiable. Or," Dax said thoughtfully, "we keep it. Use it as a teaching tool. Captain Harkness deployed technology we've never encountered, got it past our security, and maintained it for days without detection. That's valuable intelligence on our vulnerabilities. You want to reward his deception?" Odo's voice rose slightly. "I want to learn from it," Dax corrected. "And I want to acknowledge that his instincts aren't wrong, they're just from a different context. In his universe, this was standard operational security. In ours, it's a violation. He's adapting. The question is whether we're flexible enough to meet him halfway." Sisko looked at Jack. "You understand that by giving us this, you're completely vulnerable. No backup plans. No hidden advantages. If we decide you're a threat, you've just handed us the ability to predict your every move." "I understand," Jack said. "But Captain Sisko, if you were planning to betray us, you'd have done it already. You've had 3 days of integration, access to our technology, and full tactical awareness of our capabilities. The fact that you're confronting me about surveillance instead of just exploiting it tells me everything I need to know about your character. Which is that you're one of the good ones, Jack said simply. Rare as hell in any universe. So yes, I'm gambling on trust. Figured it was about time. Sisko studied him for a long moment. Then he handed the device to O'Brien. Archive it in secure storage. Document its capabilities for security training. And make sure everyone understands, this is the last secret we're accepting from Torchwood. No more hidden contingencies. No more surveillance. If they have concerns, they bring them to command. Understood? Understood, O'Brien said. Captain Harkness, Sisko continued, you're confined to quarters for 24 hours. Not as punishment, as a cooling-off period. We need to re-establish boundaries, and your team needs to understand that Federation partnership comes with expectations. Fair enough, Jack said. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Captain, I am trying. This whole working within the system thing is new for me. But I meant what I said about being better. Sometimes I just forget what better looks like. He left. When the door closed, Kira exhaled slowly. Are we sure about this? Trusting someone who just admitted to spying on us. We're sure that he's being honest now, Sisko said. Which is more than we can say about most intelligence operatives. He could have denied everything, destroyed the evidence, maintained the deception. Instead, he gave us full access and accepted consequences. He looked at Odo. That's not the behavior of an enemy. That's someone learning to operate in a different paradigm. Or someone who's very good at manipulation, Odo countered. Section 31 would call this a masterclass in gaining trust through calculated vulnerability. Then we watch, Sisko said. Carefully. But we don't throw away potential allies because they came from a darker universe. We help them adapt. We show them that our way works. And if they violate that trust again, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. In Torchwood's quarters, Gwen was furious. You planted surveillance. After everything Sisko said about trust. After we agreed to work with them properly. She paced the small room, anger radiating from every movement. Jack, we were supposed to be better. That was the whole point of accepting his offer. I know, Jack said quietly. He sat on his bunk, elbows on knees, looking more tired than Gwen had seen him in years. I know what I said. I meant it. But when I materialized on that transporter pad, surrounded by armed security in an unknown universe, instinct kicked in. The same instincts that kept me alive for 173 years. Plant surveillance. Secure intel. Prepare for betrayal. That's not instinct, Gwen said. That's paranoia. In our universe, paranoia kept us alive, Jack replied. How many times did governments turn on us? How many times did allies become enemies when resources grew scarce? I've been betrayed by time agents, by Torchwood handlers, by people I loved. So yes, I defaulted to distrust. And I was wrong. Iento poured tea, actual tea now, not replicated, somehow acquired through trade on the promenade. The question is whether Captain Sisko believes you were wrong. Or whether he believes you're simply better at deception than expected. He believes me, Jack said. I saw it in his eyes. He understands survival instinct. He's probably had his own dark moments, his own compromises. The difference is he found his way back to principles. And now he's trying to help us do the same. Toshiko looked up from her PADD, where she'd been monitoring station communications. Security sweep teams just left our quarters. They found 17 additional monitoring devices I planted in public areas. Small things, audio pickups, visual scanners, nothing invasive. But they found them all. You planted surveillance too? Gwen's voice rose. I'm a technologist, Toshiko said defensively. Information gathering is what I do. And I was worried about Section 31. About threats we couldn't see. I wanted early warning systems. We all wanted safety, Owen said from his position near the viewport. Dead eyes reflected starlight. Problem is, safety through surveillance is an illusion. We learned that the hard way in Cardiff. The more we watched, the more paranoid we became. The more paranoid we became, the more we justified invasive measures. Cycle never ends. So we end it, Jack said firmly. Right here. No more hidden devices. No more backup surveillance. We operate exactly the way Sisko wants, transparent, accountable, within the law. And if that means we're vulnerable, he shrugged. Then we're vulnerable. Maybe that's what trust actually looks like. You're gambling our lives on idealism, Ianto observed. I'm gambling our lives on people who've proven they're worth trusting, Jack corrected. Sisko could have thrown us in cells. Could have handed us to Section 31. Could have spaced us the moment we became inconvenient. Instead, he offered partnership. Offered redemption. Offered a chance to be more than what we were. That's not naivety, Ianto. That's strength. A comfortable silence settled over the room. Then Gwen said quietly, I miss Cardiff. I miss Earth. I miss knowing what we were fighting for. We're fighting for the same thing, Jack said. People who can't defend themselves. The difference is here, we're not fighting alone. We've got Starfleet backing us. We've got Federation resources. We've got allies who actually share our values instead of just exploiting our skills. He stood, moved to the viewport beside Owen. We can go home, eventually. Dax thinks she can recreate the dimensional breach. But until then, he looked at his team. Until then, let's show this universe what Torchwood was always supposed to be. Protectors. Not shadows. Protectors, Gwen repeated. She liked the sound of that. It felt cleaner than what they'd been. Lighter. Like maybe the weight of all those dark compromises could finally start to lift. The door chimed. Owen moved to answer it. Being dead had advantages in terms of fearless door answering. A Bajoran security officer stood outside, looking uncomfortable. Captain Harkness. Captain Sisko requests your presence in the cargo bay. It's urgent. Something about your prisoner. Jack's expression went cold. The portable prison cell. Yes, sir. Dar. Bashir was conducting routine medical scans of the cargo bay when his instruments detected unusual energy patterns. Chief O'Brien says the containment is destabilizing. Jack was already moving. Gwen, Ianto, with me. Tosh, pull up everything we have on that prisoner. Owen, you're on containment backup. If this thing gets loose, you're the only one who can survive direct exposure. They moved through DS9's corridors at a run, drawing startled looks from civilians. Security teams fell in behind them, alerted by the urgency. By the time they reached the cargo bay, O'Brien and Bashir were already there, along with a full security detail and several science officers. The portable prison cell sat on a cargo pallet, surrounded by portable force fields and monitoring equipment. And it was pulsing. Rhythmic energy emissions that made nearby equipment flicker and die. The cell's surface, previously inert crystalline material, now glowed with sickly bioluminescence. What's happening? Jack demanded. O'Brien pointed to readouts. The dimensional breach that brought you here, it weakened the cell's containment matrix. Your prisoner is exploiting the instability. It's been gradually wearing down the barriers from the inside. Another 12 hours, maybe less, and containment will fail completely. What's inside? Sisko asked, arriving with Kira and Dax. Jack's expression was grim. We called it the Abaddon Entity. A being from outside normal spacetime that fed on life force. It consumed entire planets in our universe. We trapped it 18 months ago using technology stolen from a Unit Black site. The cell was designed to last indefinitely. In your universe, Dax said. But dimensional physics here might be different. The laws governing its containment might not apply the same way. Can we reinforce the containment? Sisko asked. Not with Federation technology, O'Brien said. The cell operates on principles we don't understand. I can try to jury-rig stabilizers, but... The cell pulsed again. Harder. A crack appeared in the crystalline surface, hairline thin, barely visible, but growing. We're out of time, Jack said. We need to kill it. Now. Kill something that exists outside normal spacetime. Kira asked. How? Jack looked at Sisko. The same way I disabled the Dominion explosives. Temporal energy. I'm a fixed point in time, the one thing that shouldn't exist. When I die and resurrect, I release temporal energy that rewrites local causality. If I channel that directly into the Abaddon Entity, you could permanently destabilize your own temporal fixation, Dax interrupted. Captain Harkness, this isn't like the reactor. The Abaddon Entity is a dimensional predator. It feeds on life and energy. If you engage it directly, it might consume the very thing keeping you immortal. You could become permanently mortal. Or worse, temporally scattered across multiple timelines simultaneously. So what's the alternative? Jack asked. Let it break containment and consume everyone on this station. Another crack. Wider now. Something moved inside the cell, shapeless, dark, hungry. Evacuate the cargo bay, Sisko ordered. Everyone except essential personnel. Seal the bulkheads. And someone get me every temporal specialist we have. We need solutions, not just suicide plans. There's no time for solutions, Jack said. He was already moving toward the cell, phaser rifle raised. Owen, Gwen, clear the area. Ianto, if this goes wrong, tell Dax everything you remember about our rift technology. Maybe she can still send you home. Jack, no, Gwen started. That's an order, Jack said, voice hard. Get out. Now. They hesitated. Then security teams physically pulled them back, sealing blast doors between Torchwood and the cargo bay. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, they could only watch. Jack stood alone before the portable prison cell. The cracks were spreading now, spiderwebbing across the surface. And from within, something laughed. A sound that existed in frequencies biological ears couldn't process, that bypassed hearing entirely and resonated in the soul. All right, you transdimensional bastard, Jack said quietly. Let's see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an unkillable object. He fired his phaser rifle directly into the cell. Maximum setting. Sustained beam. The cell shattered. And the Abaddon Entity emerged into the Alpha Quadrant for the first time, hungry and ancient and utterly without mercy. The Abaddon Entity didn't emerge so much as unfold into reality. It had no fixed form, one moment a pillar of darkness that absorbed all light, the next a writhing mass of geometries that hurt to perceive. It existed in more dimensions than human eyes could process, its true shape bleeding through the edges of normal space like oil through water. And it was starving. Jack felt it immediately, the pull, the drain, the sensation of something fundamental being torn from his body. Not blood or breath or heat, but something deeper. Life force. The energy that animated consciousness, that separated living matter from dead. The entity consumed it like a black hole consumed light, insatiable and absolute. He dropped to one knee, phaser rifle clattering away. His vision blurred. His heartbeat stuttered. He was dying, properly dying, the kind of death that felt final in a way 18 decades of resurrections had made him forget. Then his fixed-point status kicked in. Temporal energy flooded his system, forcing cells back to life, reversing entropy, rewriting causality to insist that Jack Harkness continued to exist. The resurrection was violent, explosive, a rejection of death so fundamental that reality itself bent to accommodate it. The Abaddon Entity recoiled. Jack stood, gasping, temporal energy crackling around him like lightning. "That's right," he breathed. "I'm the thing that shouldn't exist. The fixed point. The temporal impossibility. And you?" He advanced on the entity. "You're just another predator that thinks it's untouchable." The entity struck back. Tendrils of not matter lashed out, passing through the cargo bay's bulkheads like they were suggestions rather than barriers. They wrapped around Jack, and he felt his life force draining again, faster this time, the entity learning, adapting, trying to consume him faster than his fixed point could resurrect. Jack died. And resurrected. Died again. Resurrected. Each cycle releasing pulses of temporal energy that washed over the entity like waves against stone. Outside the cargo bay, Sisko watched through the viewport in horror. "Get him out of there." "The transporter can't get a lock," O'Brien reported, hands flying over controls. "Too much temporal interference. Every time he resurrects, it creates localized distortions that scramble our targeting sensors." "Then we breach the bay," Kira said, moving toward weapons controls. "Negative," Dax countermanded. "If we open those doors, the entity could escape into the station. Right now, it's contained with Captain Harkness. The moment we give it access to the station's population, 1,400 people, it'll feed on all of them simultaneously. So we just watch him die." Gwen's voice was anguished, hands pressed against the viewport. "We watch him fight," Dax corrected. "And we find a way to help." Inside the bay, Jack was losing. He could feel it with each resurrection cycle. The entity was adapting faster than his fixed point could compensate. It had learned to time its attacks, to strike during the microsecond between death and resurrection when his temporal defenses were transitioning. Each death lasted longer. Each resurrection came harder. And then Owen Harper walked through the sealed blast door. Not through an opening, through the door itself, his dead body passing through solid matter like a ghost. He emerged into the cargo bay, completely unaffected by the barriers designed to contain living threats, and moved toward Jack with the unhurried pace of someone who'd already died and had nothing left to fear. "Owen, get out!" Jack shouted, then died again mid-sentence. Owen ignored him. He walked directly toward the Abaddon Entity, and the creature's attention shifted. It lashed out with consuming tendrils, trying to drain Owen's life force. And found nothing. Owen Harper was already dead. No life force to consume. No vital energy to feed on. He was animated by something else entirely, the Resurrection Gauntlet's necrotic energy, a force that existed in opposition to natural life. And the Abaddon Entity, for the first time in its multidimensional existence, encountered prey it couldn't consume. "Interesting," Owen said, his voice flat and clinical. "You feed on living energy. But I'm not living. I'm not dead in the way you understand death. I'm something in between. An impossibility, just like Jack." He reached out with dead hands and grabbed one of the entity's tendrils. So what happens when an impossibility touches another impossibility? The entity shrieked, a sound that transcended physical acoustics, that reverberated through subspace and made the station's hull vibrate in sympathetic resonance. It tried to withdraw, but Owen's grip was absolute. Dead muscles didn't tire. Dead nerves didn't register pain. He held on with the strength of someone who had nothing left to lose. Jack resurrected for the 17th time. He saw Owen grappling with the entity, saw his dead friend providing an opening, and understood immediately what needed to happen. He placed both hands on the entity's central mass, if central and mass were even appropriate terms for something that existed partially outside normal space, and died deliberately. But this time, he held on through the death. Maintained consciousness through biological shutdown. And when the temporal energy of his resurrection flooded outward, he channeled it directly into the Abaddon Entity. The creature convulsed. It existed outside time, had always existed outside time, had never known temporal causality as linear beings understood it. And now, for the first time, it was being forced into a fixed timeline. Jack's resurrection energy was infecting it, binding it to the flow of cause and effect, making it subject to entropy and age and the inexorable progression from past to future. The entity fought. Dimensions folded and unfolded around them. The cargo bay's geometry became impossible, walls at right angles to themselves, floors that were also ceilings, spatial dimensions inverted and reversed. Sisko and his crew watched through the viewport as reality itself seemed to break down inside the containment area. And then Toshiko did something brilliant. She'd been studying the energy patterns, comparing the entity's dimensional signatures to the readings from Torchwood's arrival. And she saw it, a correlation. A harmony. The Abaddon Entity was from another dimension, yes, but so was Torchwood. They'd arrived through the same kind of dimensional breach. Which meant they operated on compatible physics. Chief O'Brien, she called out. The wormhole, can you open it remotely? The Celestial Temple. O'Brien looked startled. Maybe, but the Prophet's control. Open it now, Toshiko demanded. Maximum aperture. Direct spatial alignment with the cargo bay. That's insane, Kira said. You're talking about exposing the Prophets to that thing. I'm talking about using the wormhole as a dimensional vent, Toshiko explained rapidly. The Prophets exist outside linear time, just like the entity. But the wormhole is a stable aperture between dimensions. If we can force the entity into the wormhole, the Prophet's nonlinear nature might neutralize its threat. It's like fighting fire with fire, nonlinear entity against nonlinear entities. Sisko made the decision in 2 seconds. Do it. Open the wormhole. O'Brien's hands flew across controls. The station's massive reactors surged, channeling power into the wormhole's natural formation. And in space beyond DS9, the Bajoran Wormhole exploded into existence, a brilliant flower of colors that shouldn't exist in normal space, the Celestial Temple opening to reveal the realm of the Prophets. Inside the cargo bay, Jack felt the dimensional pull immediately. The wormhole was exerting gravitational and spatial distortion on the entity, trying to draw it toward the aperture. But it wasn't enough. The creature was too massive, too distributed across multiple dimensions, too resistant to conventional physics. So Jack died again. And again. And again. Each death releasing temporal energy that wound around the entity like chains, binding it tighter to linear spacetime, making it more subject to the wormhole's pull. Owen held on, dead hands anchoring the creature in physical space while Jack's resurrections forced it into temporal space. 23 deaths. 24. 25. Jack lost count. He was dying faster than his body could fully heal, wounds accumulating across resurrection cycles, temporal energy burning through him like acid. He could feel his fixed point status straining, stretching toward its breaking point. Dax's warning echoed in his fragmenting consciousness, you could become permanently mortal. Or worse, temporally scattered across multiple timelines simultaneously. But the entity was weakening. Each resurrection pulse bound it tighter to causality. Each moment in linear time aged it in ways it had never experienced. It was dying, slowly, impossibly, but genuinely dying. The wormhole flared brighter. And from within its depths, something emerged. The Prophets. They didn't have physical forms, they were beings of light and perception, existing in states that made human consciousness feel constrained and limited. They surrounded the Abaddon Entity, their nonlinear awareness analyzing, comprehending, judging. And they spoke. Not in words, but in concepts that resonated directly in consciousness. The devourer. The hunger that walks. You do not belong in the linear realm. The entity thrashed, trying to break free. But Jack held on, dying and resurrecting, an endless cycle that had become his existence. And Owen held on with dead strength that knew no exhaustion. The Sisko has brought teachers, the prophets observed. Linear beings who understand non-linear concepts. The one who returns and the one who remains. Curiosities. Impossibilities. Yet they fight the devourer with tools we comprehend. The wormhole's pull intensified. No longer just gravitational, now it was existential. The prophets were actively drawing the entity into their realm, into a space where non-linear beings were subject to their absolute authority. The entity shrieked one final time and was pulled into the wormhole. It stretched across the aperture like something being drawn through a singularity, compressed and distorted and fundamentally altered. Then it vanished into the celestial temple, and the wormhole collapsed. Silence. Jack lay on the cargo bay floor, body a wreck of temporal burns and cellular damage. He tried to resurrect, felt the familiar pull of temporal energy. And nothing happened. His heart stopped. His brain ceased electrical activity. His cells began immediate entropic decay. And for the first time in 153 years, Jack Harkness stayed dead. Owen felt it immediately. The absence where Jack's impossible vitality had always been. He released his grip on the now vanished entity and stumbled toward Jack's body, dead hands checking for signs of life that his medical training knew wouldn't be there. No, Owen breathed. No, you don't get to stay dead. You're the one who can't die. That's your whole thing. You don't, his voice broke, and despite being dead himself, despite having no tears to shed, something in him fractured. You don't get to leave us here. The blast doors opened. Sisko, Bashir, Gwen, Ianto, Toshiko, everyone rushed in. Bashir was already pulling out medical equipment, scanning Jack's body, but his expression told the story before his instruments did. No neural activity, Bashir said quietly. No cellular regeneration. No temporal energy signature. He couldn't finish the sentence. Gwen collapsed beside Jack's body, hands covering her face. He gave everything. Everything. To save us. To save you. And now he's just, gone. He knew the risk, Ianto said, but his voice was hollow. He always knew it might come to this. That one day, the fixed point would fail. That death would finally stick. Toshiko was crying silently, clutching her PADD like an anchor. This was her plan. Her brilliant, terrible plan that had worked perfectly, except it had cost them Jack. Sisko stood over the body, expression unreadable. He'd known Captain Harkness for less than a week. But in that week, he'd watched a man die 26 times defending people who weren't even from his universe. Had watched him choose vulnerability over power, transparency over deception, sacrifice over survival. He was a good man, Sisko said quietly. He deserved better than this. And then the wormhole opened again. Not explosively this time, gently, like a flower blooming in space. And from its depths, something emerged. Not the Abaddon Entity. Not a prophet, exactly. But a presence that radiated purpose and deliberation. It descended into the cargo bay, passing through hull and shield and bulkhead like they were illusions. And it stopped above Jack's body, observing with senses that transcended normal perception. The one who returns has fallen, the presence communicated. The fixed point has been exhausted. Linear causality reasserts dominance. This is unacceptable. Who are you? Sisko demanded. We are the teachers of the Sisko. We observe. We guide. We test. And occasionally, we intervene. The presence enfolded Jack's body in light that existed in colors human eyes couldn't process. The one who returned served our purpose. He bound the devourer. He brought it to us. He fulfilled a function we required. And functions that serve must be preserved. You're bringing him back? Dax asked, scientific curiosity warring with awe. We are restoring what was spent. The fixed point was depleted, not destroyed. It requires energy. Temporal energy. And we exist outside time. We have no shortage of such resources. The light intensified. Jack's body began to heal, not through biological processes, but through temporal rewriting. Wounds closed by ceasing to have ever existed. Cellular damage reversed by flowing backward through causality. The fixed point was being recharged, refueled, reinforced by beings who viewed time as humans viewed three-dimensional space. Jack's eyes opened. He gasped, lungs filling with air that tasted like eternity and stardust and something fundamentally other. He looked up at the presence, at the prophets who had saved him, and managed, thanks. That was unpleasant. You will continue to return, the presence stated. The fixed point is restored. Reinforced beyond previous parameters. You will continue your function. What function? Jack asked, sitting up slowly. To teach. To bridge. To show linear beings that impossibility is merely unexplored possibility. The presence began to withdraw, pulling back toward the wormhole. The Sisko learns from you, as we learn from the Sisko. This exchange pleases us. Continue. The wormhole closed. Jack sat on the cargo bay floor, surrounded by his team, by Starfleet officers, by people who'd watched him die 26 times and had thought the 27th was permanent. He looked at his hands. Completely healed, temporal energy crackling beneath the skin, stronger than before. Did the prophets just give you a power-up? Owen asked, deadpan. I think they did, Jack said, starting to laugh. Relief, exhaustion, and the sheer absurdity of being saved by non-linear alien gods who existed in a wormhole. I think ancient spacetime beings just decided I was worth preserving. That's new. Gwen grabbed him in a fierce hug. Don't ever do that again. Don't you dare die permanently and leave us here alone. Can't promise that, Jack said gently, hugging her back. But I can promise I'll keep coming back. Apparently, the universe. Multiple universes, needs me around for something. Sisko extended a hand, helping Jack to his feet. The prophets don't intervene lightly. They exist outside our linear perception of time. They see past, present, and future simultaneously. If they restored you, it means you have a role to play. Something important. Or they just didn't want to deal with the Abaddon Entity themselves and decided their attack dog needed maintenance, Jack replied. But his smile was genuine. Either way, Captain, we won. The entity's contained, your station's safe, and I'm still annoyingly immortal. I'd call that a victory. 26 deaths, Bashir said, still reviewing his medical scans. You died 26 times in less than an hour. The accumulated trauma should have destroyed your neural pathways permanently. But somehow, he gestured helplessly at perfectly functioning Jack Harkness. Somehow, I'm too stubborn to stay dead, Jack finished. Story of my life. Lives. Whatever. Odo watched from the doorway, expression thoughtful. The prophets called you the one who returns. They gave you a title. That suggests they see you as significant to future events. Captain Sisko, we need to consider what that means for station security and long-term planning. Later, Sisko said. Right now, everyone needs medical evaluation, rest, and time to process what just happened. We nearly lost containment on an extra-dimensional predator. That's enough excitement for one day. As they filed out of the cargo bay, Jack hung back for a moment, looking at the spot where the portable prison cell had been. The entity was gone, trapped in a celestial temple with beings who could actually contain it. One threat neutralized. How many more were waiting? Jack, Gwen called from the doorway. Come on. Ianto's making tea. Real tea this time, not that replicated rubbish. Jack smiled and followed his team toward whatever came next. Behind him, unnoticed by everyone except station sensors, the cargo bay's structural integrity had been compromised. Not by the entity, by the temporal distortions from 26 resurrection cycles in rapid succession. Microfractures in the hull, stress points in the bulkheads, subtle warping in the deck plating. Nothing immediately dangerous. Nothing that would cause catastrophic failure. But enough to require repairs. Enough to attract attention. Enough to bring engineering teams into spaces they normally wouldn't access. And in the shadows between hull layers, where no sensor could penetrate and no security patrol ever checked, something else stirred. A fragment. A remnant. A piece of the Abaddon Entity that had broken off during its forced transit through the wormhole. Small. Weak. But patient. And growing. 2 weeks after the Abaddon incident, Deep Space Nine had settled into an uneasy rhythm. Torchwood had been fully integrated into station operations. Jack consulting on temporal anomalies with Dax, Gwen working alongside Odo on security protocols, Ianto organizing the station's chaotic information management systems, Toshiko collaborating with O'Brien on adapting rift technology for controlled experiments, and Owen maintaining his solitary vigil over the secured alien artifacts, the only guard who couldn't be killed by what he was protecting. The Dominion had been suspiciously quiet. No follow-up assaults. No demands. Just watchful silence from across the war's front lines, as if they were reassessing Torchwood's threat level after the temporal display in the reactor chamber. But Section 31 hadn't been quiet at all. Commander Heron returned to DS9, this time without pretense of official Starfleet business. He materialized in Sisko's office using a transporter signature that bypassed station security, a casual demonstration of Section 31's reach that made Odo's report on the intrusion deeply unsettling. Captain Sisko, Heron said pleasantly, settling into a chair without invitation. I hope Torchwood's integration is proceeding smoothly. I've been monitoring their activities. Quite impressive, actually. Captain Harkness has already identified 3 temporal anomalies your science team missed, and Miss Sato's analysis of your shield harmonics improved defensive efficiency by 18%. Get to the point, Sisko said coldly. The point is that Torchwood is wasted on defensive operations. Their tactical assets being used for research and security consulting. Heron pulled up a holographic display, tactical maps of Dominion territory, strike points, strategic targets. Section 31 has identified 17 high-value objectives that would significantly impact the war effort. Vorta cloning facilities. Ketracell White production centers. Founder communication relays. Each one heavily defended, considered impossible to strike without massive casualties. And you want Torchwood to do your dirty work, Sisko said. I want them to do what they do best, operate outside conventional parameters to neutralize threats that Starfleet can't officially target. Heron zoomed in on a specific facility. This is a Dominion research station in the Calandra sector. Intelligence suggests they're experimenting with temporal weapons, trying to reverse engineer something similar to what Captain Harkness demonstrated. If they succeed, they could deploy chronoton-based armaments that would make conventional defense impossible. You know what that means. Sisko did know. Temporal weapons could erase ships from history, could age crews to death in seconds, could create causality loops that trapped entire fleets in endless repetition. The Treaty of Algeron had prohibited such weapons for good reason, they made war unwinnable for everyone. Starfleet Command won't authorize a strike? Sisko asked, already knowing the answer. Starfleet Command considers the intelligence unverified and the facility too heavily defended. Official estimates put casualties at 70% for any assault force. Heron leaned forward. But an unofficial team? Using temporal technology and led by someone who can't permanently die. They could infiltrate, sabotage the research, and extract before Dominion reinforcements arrived. 0 official casualties. Maximum strategic impact. You're asking me to send them on a suicide mission, Sisko said. I'm asking you to let them volunteer for a mission that serves both their interests and ours. If the Dominion develops functional temporal weapons, this station, and the wormhole you're sworn to protect, becomes a priority target. Torchwood has the skills to prevent that. The question is whether you'll let them use those skills, or whether you'll keep them locked down in research roles while the Dominion builds weapons that could kill billions. Sisko stared at the tactical display. 17 targets. 17 impossible missions. And Section 31 was offering Torchwood as the solution to all of them. I'll discuss it with Captain Harkness, Sisko said finally. But this is his choice. His team's choice. Not an order. Not coercion. Their decision. Of course, Heron agreed smoothly. Section 31 doesn't force compliance. We simply provide opportunities for people to be their best selves. He stood, leaving the holographic data active on Sisko's desk. Think about it, Captain. Think about what Torchwood could accomplish if you stopped treating them like refugees and started treating them like the weapons they were designed to be. He left the same way he'd arrived. A transporter signature that bypassed every security protocol, a reminder that Section 31 operated beyond conventional authority. Sisko sat alone, staring at the 17 targets, and wondered how far he was willing to compromise his principles to win a war. Jack found out about Section 31's proposal when Sisko called him to the office that evening. The captain had clearly been debating how to present it, his body language was tense, his usual measured composure showing cracks. They want us for Black Ops, Jack said, scanning the tactical data. Sabotage. Assassination. Deep penetration missions behind enemy lines. Classic Section 31 recruitment pitch. Is it wrong that I'm considering it? Sisko asked quietly. Jack looked up, surprised. You're actually asking my opinion. You've operated in moral gray areas longer than I've been alive. You've seen what happens when good people make hard choices. I need to know, Sisko paused. If I authorize this, if I let Section 31 turn you into their off-books operatives, am I helping you serve a purpose? Or am I betraying everything I promised when you agreed to work with us? Jack studied the tactical displays. 17 targets. Each one a legitimate military objective. Each one defended by soldiers bred to die for their cause. Each one potentially savable without official Starfleet casualties if Torchwood took the mission. Sisko, in my universe, I ran Black Ops for 150 years. Assassinations, sabotage, temporal intervention, memory alteration. Everything Section 31 wants us to do, I've done 1,000 times. And you know what I learned? Jack met the captain's eyes. It hollows you out. Every mission where you kill from the shadows, every target eliminated without due process, every compromise justified by strategic necessity, it takes something from you. And eventually, you look in the mirror and don't recognize what's looking back. So you're saying no? Sisko asked. I'm saying I understand why you're tempted, Jack replied. The Dominion is an existential threat. Temporal weapons would be catastrophic. And Torchwood has the skills to stop it. But Captain, he gestured to the targets. If we start down this path, if we become Section 31's attack dogs, we'll never stop. There will always be another target. Another threat. Another justification for working outside the law. And eventually, we'll be exactly what Torchwood was in our darkest days, killers pretending we're protectors. Sisko nodded slowly. So what do you suggest? We go after the temporal weapons facility, Jack said. But we do it officially. Starfleet operation, full chain of command, transparent objectives. We volunteer as consultants, not as off-books operators. If casualties are expected to be 70%, we use our unique capabilities to reduce those casualties, not to replace conventional forces entirely. Section 31 won't like that, Sisko observed. Section 31 can go to hell, Jack said cheerfully. They've tried to recruit me before, different universe, same manipulative tactics. I'm done being someone's secret weapon. We're working with you, Captain. Not for shadows who operate without accountability. Sisko smiled slightly. I was hoping you'd say that. I'll inform Commander Heron that Torchwood is declining Section 31's recruitment. We'll present the Temporal Weapons Facility mission to Starfleet Command as a legitimate military operation with Torchwood as specialized consultants. They'll probably say no, Jack warned. Probably, Sisko agreed. But at least we'll have tried to do it the right way. Starfleet Command said no. The official response came 3 days later: insufficient intelligence, unacceptable risk, alternate strategies under consideration. The temporal weapons facility would be monitored but not targeted. The decision was final. Jack stood in ops when the transmission arrived, watching Sisko's expression carefully neutral as he acknowledged the orders. When the communication ended, the captain looked at him. I'm sorry, Sisko said. I tried. I know you did, Jack replied. And I appreciate it. That's the difference between you and Section 31, you actually tried to work within the system, even when it failed. Kira looked up from tactical. So what now? We just let the Dominion develop temporal weapons. We monitor, Sisko said. We gather intelligence. We present updated assessments to command and hope they reconsider. He looked around ops. At his officers, at Torchwood, at people who'd been fighting this war long enough to know that sometimes the right choice lost to bureaucratic caution. We do our jobs. And we trust that Starfleet's principles will guide us to the right outcome. Even when those principles get people killed. Owen asked from his position near engineering. Dead eyes reflected no emotion, but the question carried weight nonetheless. Especially then, Sisko said firmly. Because the alternative is becoming the thing we're fighting against. And I won't let that happen. Not on my station. Not with my crew. The conversation ended there. But the tension remained, the knowledge that somewhere in Dominion space, scientists were building weapons that could rewrite history, and Starfleet had chosen caution over action. That night, Jack sat alone in Quark's bar, nursing a drink that tasted nothing like anything from his universe. The promenade was quiet, late shift, most personnel sleeping or off duty. Just him, the bartender, and the weight of choices not made. Gwen found him there an hour later. She slid into the seat beside him, ordered her own drink, and waited. You're thinking about doing it anyway, she said finally. Taking the Section 31 mission. Going after the temporal weapons facility without authorization. The thought crossed my mind, Jack admitted. It's crossed all of our minds, Gwen said. We're sitting here with the skills to stop something catastrophic, and we're letting regulations prevent us from acting. It feels wrong. It feels familiar, Jack corrected. How many times did Torchwood violate law and protocol to prevent disasters? How many times did we justify breaking the rules because we knew better than the authorities? He looked at her. And how many times did that lead to unintended consequences we couldn't fix? Gwen was quiet for a moment. Then, what do you want to do, Jack? I want to trust Sisko's way, Jack said. I want to believe that working within the system produces better outcomes. But I've lived too long to ignore practical reality. The Dominion is building temporal weapons. Starfleet Command said no. And we're the only people in this quadrant who might be able to stop it. So we're doing the mission, Gwen concluded. No, Jack said, surprising her. We're not. Because if we go behind Sisko's back and operate as Section 31 assets, we prove that we haven't changed. That we're still the same Torchwood that chose expedience over ethics. He drained his drink. We offered Sisko trust. Real trust. That means respecting his decisions even when we disagree. Even when those decisions might get people killed. That's very mature of you, Gwen said, voice soft. Yeah, well, I've had 173 years to practice maturity. Still not great at it. Jack smiled. But I'm trying. We're all trying. And maybe that's enough. They sat in comfortable silence, two refugees from another universe, choosing principle over pragmatism in a war that didn't forgive either. Commander Heron learned of their decision within hours. Section 31's information network was disturbingly efficient. He stood in a darkened ready room on a ship that officially didn't exist, reviewing reports on Torchwood's activities. They'd declined recruitment. Chosen Starfleet over Section 31. Picked transparency over effectiveness. Disappointing, he said to the empty room. But not unexpected. Captain Harkness has always been sentimental about principles. It's his greatest weakness. Or his greatest strength, another voice said from the shadows. A woman stepped into the dim light, elderly, sharp-eyed, carrying authority like a weapon. Director Sloan. Section 31's architect and most ruthless strategist. You disagree with my assessment? Heron asked. I disagree with writing them off, Sloan replied. Torchwood chose Starfleet today. But circumstances change. Threats escalate. And eventually, they'll face a situation where Starfleet regulations prevent them from saving lives. When that day comes, they'll remember that we offered another way. And if that day never comes, then we proceed without them, Sloan said simply. Section 31 has operated for 2 centuries without dimensional refugees. We'll continue regardless. But I suspect Captain Harkness will prove useful eventually. Immortality provides perspective. And perspective, combined with desperation, produces valuable assets. She left, footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. Heron returned to his reports, already planning contingencies. Section 31 never relied on single solutions. If Torchwood wouldn't volunteer, other options existed. Other pressures. Other motivations. Patience was a virtue. And Section 31 had centuries of practice. Meanwhile, in the deepest shadows of DS9's infrastructure, the Abaddon fragment continued growing. It had learned patience from its imprisonment. Had learned caution from its defeat. And it was learning about this universe, absorbing information from the station's computer networks, studying the beings that had trapped it. Soon, it would be strong enough to manifest again. Strong enough to feed. Strong enough to show these linear beings what true hunger looked like. But not yet. Not while the one who returns was alert and the prophets were watching. Patience. Stealth. Preparation. And when the moment came, when guard was dropped and attention wandered, it would strike. Deep Space Nine had survived the Abaddon Entity once. But the fragment was learning. Adapting. Evolving. And the second time, there would be no prophets to intervene. No resurrection to save them. Just darkness, and hunger, and the screaming silence of consumed souls. Jack woke from a nightmare he couldn't remember, temporal energy crackling around his hands from the stress. He sat up in his quarters, breathing hard, trying to shake the lingering sense of wrongness. Something was coming. He could feel it the way sailors felt storms on the horizon. Not immediate. Not obvious. But inevitable. He activated his comm badge. Jack to Sisko. A pause. Then, Sisko here. It's 0300 hours, Captain. This better be important. Just checking in, Jack said. Making sure the station's secure. That everything's normal. Another pause. Define normal. Still standing. No dimensional breaches. No unexplained disappearances. No feelings of existential dread. All negative on those, Sisko replied, voice warming slightly. Can't sleep. Never could, Jack admitted. Not really. Sleep is for people who aren't trying to outrun eternity. Get some rest anyway, Sisko ordered. We've got a briefing at 0800 on the Dominion supply lines. I need you sharp. Copy that. Jack out. He lay back down, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of two universes pressing down. One he couldn't return to. One he didn't fully belong in. But here, on this station, with these people, he had something he'd lost decades ago in Cardiff. Purpose. Not just survival. Not just fighting. But genuine purpose, working with people who shared values worth defending. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Jack closed his eyes and tried to believe it, even as the darkness between stars whispered warnings he was too tired to hear. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. New threats. New choices between principle and pragmatism. But tonight, for just a few hours, Captain Jack Harkness allowed himself to rest. And dream of a universe where immortality felt less like a curse and more like a gift. 6 months after Torchwood fell through dimensional barriers into the Alpha Quadrant, Deep Space Nine had transformed from a reluctant host into something closer to home. The integration had been anything but smooth. There were incidents. Cultural clashes when Torchwood's pragmatic methods collided with Starfleet regulations, security concerns when alien artifacts from their salvage proved more dangerous than catalogued, and one memorable occasion when Owen's dead body malfunctioned a biofilter and triggered station-wide contamination protocols. But slowly, painfully, through trial and error and genuine effort from both sides, a working partnership emerged. Jack stood on the promenade, watching the flow of species that would have seemed impossible in his universe, Bajorans, Vulcans, Klingon, Ferengi, all coexisting in the messy, vibrant chaos of Federation life. Gwen had integrated with station security so thoroughly that Odo grudgingly admitted she had instincts that formal Starfleet training couldn't teach. Ianto had revolutionized the station's information management, creating archival systems that made O'Brien weep with gratitude. Toshiko and Dax had formed a scientific partnership that produced 3 breakthrough papers on dimensional mechanics. And Owen, still dead, still walking, had found unexpected purpose training medical personnel in trauma response, because someone who couldn't feel pain understood suffering in ways the living sometimes couldn't. But the cost of integration had been real. The Abaddon fragment had struck 3 months in, not with overwhelming force, but with surgical precision. It had consumed 17 people before Jack and the Prophet's intervention contained it permanently. 17 souls gone because Torchwood hadn't detected the remnants soon enough. 17 names Jack added to the list of people who died on his watch. The Dominion War continued. Section 31 made periodic contact, always with new offers, new missions, new temptations toward moral compromise. Jack declined each time, and Sisko's respect grew with each refusal. The temporal weapons facility that Starfleet Command had refused to target was eventually destroyed, not by Black Ops, but by a conventional fleet action after Toshiko's intelligence gathering provided actionable verification. Higher casualties than Torchwood strike would have caused, but accomplished within legal frameworks that preserved Federation principles. And the Rift manipulator remained broken. Despite months of work, despite Dax's brilliance and Toshiko's expertise, despite O'Brien's engineering miracles, they couldn't recreate the exact dimensional resonance needed to send Torchwood home. The Bajoran Wormhole was too stable, too controlled by the Prophet's nonlinear consciousness. It wouldn't fracture the way Cardiff's rift had fractured. Torchwood was stranded. Permanently. Jack should have felt despair at that realization. Should have raged against the cosmic injustice of dimensional exile. But standing here, watching Gwen laugh with a Bajoran deputy, watching Ianto organize a cultural exchange program with Vulcan efficiency, watching his broken family find purpose in a universe that wasn't their own, he felt something unexpected. Peace. Not happiness. Not contentment. But the quiet acceptance that sometimes home isn't where you came from. It's where you're needed. Where you matter. Where the work you do makes a difference. Captain Harkness. Sisko's voice interrupted his thoughts. The captain had approached with characteristic quiet, hands clasped behind his back. Walk with me. They moved through the promenade, past Quark's bar, past the Bajoran temple, toward the viewport that showed the wormhole in the distance. That brilliant, impossible gateway to the Gamma Quadrant and the realm of the prophets. Dax presented her final report this morning, Sisko said. She's exhausted every theoretical approach to recreating your dimensional breach. Without the original rift's unique properties, we can't generate the necessary resonance. I'm sorry. Don't be, Jack replied. We knew it was a long shot. And honestly, Captain, I'm not sure we belong back in our universe anymore. We've changed. We've seen what working within a system that actually values principles looks like. Going back to the shadows, to operating without oversight, he shook his head. I don't think we could do that again. Sisko studied him. The Dominion War will end eventually. When it does, Starfleet will need to rebuild, to address the compromises made during wartime. They'll need people who understand the cost of moral shortcuts. People who chose the harder right over the easier wrong. You're offering us a permanent position. I'm offering you a purpose beyond survival, Sisko said. You've proven you can work within Federation frameworks. You've demonstrated value beyond tactical utility. And frankly, we need voices like yours, people who've seen what happens when good intentions meet zero accountability. You can help ensure Starfleet doesn't lose itself in the peace the way it's been tempted to during war. Jack looked out at the wormhole, at the gateway that would never take him home. You know I'm still immortal. I'll watch everyone I care about age and die. Again. Centuries from now, I'll still be here, and you'll all be dust. Then you'll remember us, Sisko said simply. You'll remember that for a time, a group of refugees from another universe chose principle over expedience. Chose transparency over shadows. Chose to be better than what they were. That memory, Captain Harkness, will matter more than you realize. They stood in silence, watching the wormhole pulse with colors that shouldn't exist. Behind them, the promenade continued its eternal rhythm, species trading, arguing, coexisting in the beautiful chaos of Federation ideals made manifest. All right, Jack said finally. We'll stay. Build something here. Maybe teach the next generation that being a protector doesn't require operating in the dark. He smiled. Fair warning though, we're still going to break some rules. Just probably fewer rules than before. I'd expect nothing less, Sisko replied. Welcome home, Captain. In his personal log that night, Benjamin Sisko recorded. Today marked the official end of attempts to return Torchwood to their point of origin. Lieutenant Commander Dax exhausted all theoretical approaches. They're stranded here, permanently. I expected disappointment. Anger. Grief for a world they can never return to. Instead, I found acceptance. Captain Harkness and his team have integrated so thoroughly into station operations that I sometimes forget they're from another universe entirely. They've adapted. Learned. Grown. The prophets told me that Torchwood's arrival served a purpose. To teach, to bridge, to show linear beings that impossibility is merely unexplored possibility. I didn't understand what they meant at the time. I understand now. Torchwood showed us that principles without pragmatism are brittle. That ideals must be tested, challenged, refined through contact with people who've seen those same ideals fail. They've made us stronger by forcing us to defend our values instead of simply asserting them. And in return, we've shown them that working within a system, even a flawed system, produces better outcomes than operating outside it entirely. Captain Harkness will outlive us all. Centuries from now, when everyone on this station is long dead, he'll still carry the memory of what we built here. Of a time when refugees from darkness chose to work in the light. I think the prophets knew that would matter. Knew that some lessons can only be taught through experience. Knew that Jack Harkness needed Deep Space Nine as much as we needed him.